Chapter 535. Shui Feng, why aren't you letting go? She shouted in a low voice as her face sunk. What was wrong with this Shui Feng? He had accidentally grabbed the wrong place, but he still wouldn't let go. If he said that he wasn't doing this on purpose, no one would believe him. Shui Feng sobered up and turned around. It was like he had been burned by fire as he pulled back his hand. His face instantly turned red to his ears. Yes, yes, yes. No, miss, I didn't do it on purpose. He stuttered. He was very embarrassed and wanted to find a hole to hide in. Wah. Xiao Ru finally reacted. Her chest had been touched by a strange man. She felt wronged and sad as she began to loudly cry. She was sobbing and sobbing, her heart broken. Shui Feng was at a loss as he said in a low voice, "You, don't cry. I'll apologize to you. I was wrong. Woo. You bad person, you. You compensate me." Xiao Ru cried even louder. I'll compensate. After Shui Feng said this, he was a little stunned. How would he compensate? What would he use to compensate? Woo, my clothes were made by the young miss for 2 silvers, but your hands dirted it. You have to compensate me with 2 silvers, quickly compensate me. Woo. Xiao Ru cried until she couldn't catch her breath. There were 5 black fingerprints on her chest, which made her heart ache just by looking at it. This was the first day she had worn this new dress and it had been dirted by a man who came out of nowhere. Her heart ached to death. Hearing this, Shui Feng was stunned. Chen Ning's lips also twitched. The two of them stared at Xiao Ru. Chen Ning felt her face burn. How could a smart person like her have such a stupid girl by her side? She really wanted to turn her head and say, I don't know her. Shui Feng let out a long sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He immediately took out a bag of money from his chest and placed it in Xiao Ru's hands. I'll compensate you with all the silver in here, don't cry. Xiao Ru sniffled as she opened the bag of money. She saw small ingots of silver inside. She pulled out a piece of silver and threw the bag of money to Shui Feng. I only want you to compensate me with the silver for my clothes. I'll give this back to you. No, I did something wrong. I'll give you all these silvers. Shui Feng's back was soaked in sweat. He had never encountered this kind of embarrassing matter in his life. Just now, he was really afraid that this girl would make him pay for the rest of his life. Fortunately, this girl only wanted money and not him. I don't want it. The young miss said that you can't take ill-gotten gains. Xiao Ru said in a righteous manner. No, you have to accept it. Shui Feng gave the bag of money back to Xiao Ru. I don't, why are you so annoying? Who are you? Did you appear here? Xiao Ru was impatient. She suddenly stared at Shui Feng and found that she did not recognize him at all. His clothes were not like the servants of the eldest princess palace. I am. Shui Feng couldn't help looking at Chen Ning. How should he introduce himself? There. Xiao Ru. Chen Ning, who had been watching from the side, pulled Xiao Ru over. She rolled her eyes at Shui Feng and said, he is not a person. Xiao Ru and Shui Feng were stunned. Chapter 536. Shui Feng's little thoughts could fool Xiao Ru, but he couldn't escape her eyes. Although she could see that Shui Feng did not mean it and did not intend to take advantage of Xiao Ru, as a man of this era, shouldn't he have a sense of responsibility? Since he had accidentally touched the wrong place, he should have bravely stood up and accepted the consequences. He should have immediately expressed his attitude and said that he would take responsibility for Xiao Ru, right? But this man actually wanted to use a bag of silver to settle this matter. Ze, this kind of character, she really didn't like it. Even if he said that he would take responsibility for Xiao Ru, she wouldn't agree. It was a good thing that this girl Xiao Ru was too young and didn't understand the matters between men and women. She didn't know that she had been taken advantage of by someone, so it wouldn't be good if she revealed this matter, so she just pretended to be confused. Shui Feng, bring the bag of money over. Also hand over all the silver on you. She coldly looked at Shui Feng. He was the Emperor's secret guard, so he must have quite a bit of savings. He wanted to use a bag of silver to settle Xiao Ru. Xiao Ru was stupid, but she wasn't. Shui Feng was stunned for a bit before obediently handing the bag of money over to Qin Ning. He also took out a large amount of silver from his chest, but there was not even a few thousand silvers. Of course, this was not all he had. Qin Ning held the silver and bag of money in her hand and said with a serious expression, "These silver can be considered compensation for offending Xiao Ru. Then you can forget everything that happened just now and not mention a single word about it. This matter will be settled like this. Shui Feng, do you have any dissatisfaction with me handling this matter like this?" Shui Feng secretly thought that the princess consort was very powerful. He quickly nodded, "This subordinate will listen to the princess consort's decision, I do not have any dissatisfaction at all." He even secretly let out a sigh of relief. "Very good, Xiao Ru, take this silver, this will be your dowry in the future. This is not some ill-gotten gains, it is something that he is willing to compensate you with, so you can just accept it." Qin Ning pulled Xiao Ru's hand and gave the bag of money and silver to her. Xiao Ru's eyes went wide as she looked at the things in her hand. She simply could not believe that she had suddenly obtained several thousand silvers. God, was she dreaming? Shui Feng, you can leave. There's nothing else here. Qin Ning did not have a good impression of Shui Feng. She thought that a hidden guard really was a hidden guard. Hiding in the dark all day, his heart had also become dark. Shui Feng did not move. He looked out the window and said in a deep voice, "There's someone outside." He had jumped out of his hiding place when he heard the commotion outside the window. "There's someone." Qin Ning looked out the window and thought that Chu Xiaoyang wouldn't have come, right? Thinking of Chu Xiaoyang, she felt a dull pain in her chest and couldn't help frowning. Why did her chest feel this pain when she thought of thought? Why did her chest feel so tight whenever she thought of him? And twice in a row, she fainted for no reason. "It's a martial arts expert," Shui Feng replied. He slowly walked over to the window step by step, holding his breath as he prepared himself. The windows suddenly of Feng Feng and Qing Ling Chen Feng Xiao of Feng. The window opened at Feng Xiao Feng Feng of Ru of Feng of Ziti Xiao. Qin Ning hugged her and stared at the window without blinking. It was broad daylight, she did not believe that there would be any ghosts. The window finally opened and flowers bloomed outside. In the middle of the flowers, there was a white as snow-clothed young man with a frosty appearance. He was currently smiling at her. Chapter 537. Xiao Bai, so it's you. Qin Ning let out a soft sigh and also revealed a sweet smile to the white-clothed youth. "Greetings King Jing'an." When Shui Feng saw Chu Xiaobai, he did not seem surprised at all, but his expression was a bit awkward. "Shui Feng, why are you here?" Chu Xiaobai's eyes fell onto Shui Feng. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "I understand, it must be the Emperor who sent you to protect her, right? Uncle Emperor is really good to me. Before I left the capital, I asked him to help me protect Ning's safety. He really kept his word. You just returned to the capital and he immediately sent you over. When I see the Emperor, I must properly thank him." He turned to look at Chen Ning and said with a smile, "Seeing that you're safe, I'm relieved." Zhui Feng lowered his head in silence. He did not know how to reply. He now understood everything that had happened. This King Jing'an was still kept in the dark by his master. If he knew the truth, wouldn't he go all out against his master? Zhui Feng, now that I'm here, I'll be responsible for her safety. You can return to the Emperor's side. Chu Xiaobai said. This subordinate is following the Emperor's orders. The Emperor ordered this subordinate to protect the princess consort, so this subordinate does not dare disobey master's orders. What do you mean? Do you think this king will harm her? Chu Xiaobai raised his brows and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. This subordinate does not dare. Zhui Feng bowed. Then leave. This king has something to say to Ning Er. Chu Xiaobai impatiently stared at him. This. Zhui Feng hesitated a bit. I ask King Jing'an for forgiveness. This subordinate's duty is to not leave the princess consort's side. You don't even listen to this king's words. Zhui Feng bowed and said, Please forgive me King Jing'an, this subordinate only has one master. In other words, he only listened to Mo Chuan's orders. Chu Xiaobai did not get angry and instead revealed a smile. All right, this king won't make it hard for you. You are loyal to the emperor, this king is very pleased. He smiled as he jumped through the window. He walked beside Zhui Feng and patted his shoulder. With a smile, he said, Zhui Feng, next time you have time, this king will invite you for a drink. This subordinate. Zhui Feng's voice suddenly stopped. He maintained his bowed posture without moving, but his eyes were wide open as he stared at Chu Xiaobai in front of him. Humph, you want to fight with this king? You better be more obedient next time, but there won't be a next time. Chu Xiaobai laughed as he withdrew his finger from Zhui Feng's acupuncture point. He placed him under the bed and then revealed a faint smile to Xiao Ru. I want to have a few words with your master and you. Can Xiao sleep. You. Xiao out. And Xiao out of sleep, she fell out, Ling. Xiao bai. Xiao, she out of Xiao of out. Xiao bai, you're not allowed to smile at my maid like this in the future. This girl's eyes are too shallow, if you manage to move her heart, I'll marry her to you. Chen Ning angrily looked at Chu Xiaobai. She pulled over the blanket and covered Xiao Ru with it before walking off the bed. Ning I was wrong. I won't smile at her in the future, I'll only smile at you, alright? Chu Xiaobai said in a soft voice as he looked at her without blinking. After not seeing her for a few days, she seemed to have become even more beautiful. Chapter 538. Xiaobai, did you come to see me as soon as you came back? Why aren't you resting? Since I'm here, I won't run away. Look, your eyes are completely red. Chen Ning noticed that although he was still as elegant as before, there was a weathered look on his face. Especially his eyes, they were completely red. When he came back last time, he also had a pair of rabbit eyes like this. She couldn't help feeling a bit of guilt. If it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have been running around outside and not having a good rest. Ning are you worried about me? His eyes instantly lit up and he wanted to pull her hand. Chen Ning took a step back and said with a faint smile, Yes, now that you've seen me, I'm fine. If you don't want me to worry, you should go back and sleep. If you have anything to say, we'll talk about it when you wake up. She blushed under his burning gaze. She was thinking in her heart, should she tell him about her and Mo Chuan's matter? But when she saw his face that was as pure as water, as well as those clean and limpid eyes, she couldn't open her mouth no matter what. The only thing she could do now was to keep her distance from him. Ning I have something to give you. Chu Xiaobai did not notice her distance at all. He excitedly took out a long brocade box from his chest and placed it in front of her like he was presenting a treasure. "What is this?" she said with a smile. "If it's very expensive, I won't accept it. It's just a worthless little thing, you definitely won't like it. I'll just throw it away." He shook his head in a dejected manner. He raised his hand and prepared to throw it out the window. "Wait, let me see what it is." She grabbed his hand and took the brocade box from his hand, opening it. The brocade box looked beautiful on the outside, but there was a long and thin piece of wood inside. It couldn't be called wood. One end was thin and the other was carved into the shape of a flower. "This is a wooden hairpin." She picked it up and looked at it. She saw that the carving was simple and the hairpin was not smooth enough. No matter how she thought about it, she could not imagine that Xiaobai would actually give her such an unremarkable thing. "Did you make this yourself?" She was smart and immediately guessed it. She looked at him with a smile. "Yes, this is my first time learning how to do it." "Isn't it ugly?" "If you don't like it, you can just throw it away." His handsome face was slightly red as he looked at her nervously, his fingers clenched. Even though he sounded nonchalant, if she really threw it away, he would still be very disappointed and sad. However, he would definitely not let her see it. Next time, he would make a more beautiful and exquisite one for her. But this time, he really didn't have time. "Who said it's ugly?" "Whoever said that the hairpin was ugly must be blind. I think it's very beautiful and I like it a lot." "Xiaobai, thank you. I'll accept this gift." She placed the hairpin on her head and asked him with a smile, "Does it look good?" Although he didn't say it, she could see his facial expressions. How could she not know what he was thinking? How could she let a boy who craved praise be disappointed with his first work? Chu Xiaobai's eyes lit up and his beautiful black eyes sparkled. Beautiful, very beautiful. She accepted it. She accepted the hairpin carved by him and wore it on her head. Chapter 539. Ning, I'm really very happy. He suddenly grabbed her hand and revealed a bright smile to her. His palm was burning hot and the glow in his eyes was even more intense. Chen Ning suddenly felt that something was wrong. She had just accepted his gift, did he need to be this excited? "Xiaobai, I heard that the East Qin envoys came to our capital city today and the royal palace is holding a banquet, why didn't you attend?" "I think the palace must be very lively." "You are King Jing'an, wouldn't it be bad if you didn't attend?" She changed the topic and pulled her hand out of his grasp without a trace. It's very lively, but I don't like it. I like being here with you." He looked into her eyes and said. The uneasiness in her heart increased. She wanted to pull back her hand, but he forcefully held it. "Ning, do you like lively? There are many fun things on the streets right now, many of which I have never seen before. Let's go take a look, alright?" Her heart skipped a beat. She felt that his idea wasn't bad. "Alright." She nodded and turned to look at Xiao Ru on the bed. "Bring Xiao Ru with you, she likes lively things." "No, just let her have a good sleep here," Wang Yao said. Chu Xiaobai immediately shook his head. He did not wait for her to say anything else as he jumped out the window. They avoided the eyes and ears of the palace's guards, jumping over 2 walls and leaving the eldest princess palace. Coming to the crowded streets, Chen Ning found that she had underestimated the prosperity of the capital city. It was indeed very lively here. There were all kinds of things to eat, play, and have fun. It seemed that every family had rushed to the streets on this day. She was quickly separated from Chu Xiaobai by the crowd, but very quickly, he squeezed through the crowd and used his hand to protect her, not letting the crowd touch her again. "I'm sorry, Ning, I never thought there would be this many people here. If I knew earlier, I wouldn't have suggested coming here to watch the fun. He was a little angry and a little regretful as he kept looking at the people beside him. This was because he found that more and more people were not going to watch the fun, but were instead looking at the two of them. They had unknowingly become the focus of everyone's attention. Originally, the two of them had outstanding looks. One was a white-clothed handsome youth and the other was a beautiful young girl. Standing in the middle of the crowd, they were like cranes among chickens. It was a pleasing scene and it was impossible for them not to attract attention. Especially the street thugs. They surrounded Chin Ning with their eyes rolling around. They had malicious smiles on their faces as they tried to strike up a conversation with her. "Little girl, is the one beside you your little lover? Look at his weak body, does he want to be a flower protector? Why don't you come with us? We'll make sure you're happy." A ruffian stared at Chin Ning. The more he looked, the more he liked her. He even dared to come up and pull her hand. When the thugs saw this, they began to cheer as well. They were very familiar with this street and were known as the street tyrants. Taking liberties with innocent women was a common thing for them. Normal people did not dare provoke them and would take a detour when they saw them. When the citizens saw this, they did not dare say anything. They secretly felt sorry for Chin Ning in their hearts. If this kind of flower-like little girl was taken in by these thugs, she would die prematurely. Chapter 540. A "Gotcha" sound rang out. That ruffian's hand had not even touched Chin Ning when he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his wrist. He looked down and immediately cried out, "My wrist. My hand is broken, it's broken. Oh, it hurts." He hugged his arm and cried out in pain, not understanding how his wrist had suddenly been broken. There were many people on the side who could clearly see that the white-clothed beautiful youth had stretched out a finger and gently tapped that ruffian's wrist, breaking that ruffian's wrist. Zzzz! The surrounding people all took in a cold breath. Everyone looked at Chu Xiaobai with shocked eyes. This beautiful youth was very strong. If you dare have any ideas about her, you'll end up like this fellow. All of you scram. Chu Xiaobai's face was as cold as ice and his voice was cold. His eyes swept over the crowd of ruffians, making everyone feel a chill. This is bad, they had met a hard nut today. These two people could not be provoked. The ruffians quickly held the ruffian who had his wrist broken and ran into the crowd, disappearing without a single one of them. Chu Xiaobai's face was still not very good. He never thought that there would be people this bold, taking liberties with his beloved girl in broad daylight. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want this matter to become big, he would have broken all of their legs. He had wanted to bring her to watch the fun, but how could he be in the mood to watch the fun? He knew that if this continued, they would become the fun and everyone would come to see them. He used his arm to protect her shoulder and quickly brought her away from the crowd, going wherever there were fewer people. Very quickly, they left the crowd and came to a quiet and sparsely populated alley. "Xiaobai, didn't we want to watch the fun? Why did you bring me here?" Chen Ning looked left and right. The alley was very deep and there was not a single person in sight. It was like a completely different world compared to the bustling street from before. Chu Xiaobai waved his sleeve, but his anger had not disappeared. Thinking of the fiery gazes everyone had on her, he wished he could cover her from head to toe with a hood, not letting anyone see her. He felt like his brain had gone crazy. He actually brought her out to go shopping, making him filled with anger. There are too many people there and it's too chaotic. There's nothing fun to see. He suddenly grabbed her hand and ran out of the alley. "I thought of a good place. It's quiet and has a beautiful scenery, I'll take you there." He pulled her to the entrance of the alley and saw a carriage parked there. There was no one in the carriage and the horse was tied to a tree. It seemed like the people in the carriage had gone to watch the fun. He did not say a word as he untied the horse's reins and pulled her onto the carriage. He sat in the carriage and sat in the carriage. Xiao Bai, this carriage has an owner. I never thought that the respected King Jing'an would steal a carriage. Chen Ning pursed her lips and said with a smile. You're right, I won't steal it. Chu Xiaobai nodded with a smile. He threw out a piece of silver that landed under the tree before whipping away. Hey, what if this silver is picked up by someone else? Wouldn't the owner have lost his car for nothing? That has nothing to do with me. I'll give you this silver and I'll drive the carriage away. This doesn't count as stealing, don't you think? He looked back at her with a smile. Then he drove the carriage forward. Very quickly, the carriage left the capital and arrived at the outskirts. Chapter 541. Chen Ning came out of the carriage and hugged her knees as she sat beside Chu Xiaobai. She breathed in the fresh air and enjoyed the scenery on both sides. The two of them did not say a word. There was only the crisp sound of the whip and the sound of the horse's hooves. But the atmosphere was very peaceful and harmonious. The carriage became more and more remote as it left the main road. It entered a muddy path filled with thorns and slowed down. Xiao Bai, where are you taking me? How long will it take to get there? Chen Ning looked up at the sky. The sun was already slowly moving to the west and they were already very far from the city. If this continued, they wouldn't be able to return to the city before it was dark. We're almost there. When you see it, you'll definitely like it. Chu Xiaobai drove the carriage and turned into a valley. In the valley, there was a fiery red glow. There were also white clouds that floated in the middle of the red glow. Chen Ning's eyes lit up as she was pleasantly surprised. This was a very, very large valley. It was surrounded on all sides by green mountains and there were flowers and trees all over the mountains. Peach blossoms, apricot blossoms, and pear blossoms. Red like fire, pink like clouds, and white like snow, it was too beautiful to behold. She unknowingly held her breath as she was amazed by the natural beauty in front of her. The carriage stopped and he pulled her into the sea of flowers, passing by a pear blossom tree. These pear blossoms were very beautiful. As the wind blew, the snow-white petals fell like rain onto her hair, forehead, and shoulders. Do you like it here? He looked at her with a faint smile. Ever since they entered the valley, his eyes had not left her for a second. She was looking at the beautiful scenery and he was looking at her. In his eyes, there was no scenery more beautiful than her in this world. I like it. She sincerely nodded. I know you'll like it. When I accidentally came here, I was just as excited and happy as you were. At that time, the first person I thought of was you. I think you'll definitely fall in love with this place, just like me. He stood under a peach blossom tree and revealed a faint smile to her. His white clothes were like frost and the peach blossoms were like a dazzling flower. Chen Ning suddenly thought of a poem, "The peach blossoms on a person's face are red." Although the peach blossoms were beautiful, how could they compare to his dazzling appearance? He found a flat patch of grass and pulled her to sit down. Then, as if he was performing a magic trick, he took out a bottle of wine and a roasted chicken. Where did you get this wine and chicken? She was hungry, so she was pleasantly surprised. Not only wine and chicken, there is even more delicious food. He smiled and took out a bundle from behind him. Inside were several exquisite desserts and fresh fruits. Xiao Bai, do you know how to do magic? I found it in the carriage. Maybe the owner of the carriage forgot to take it with him. It's a good thing for us. He smiled as he spread the food and drinks on the ground, then tore off a chicken leg and handed it to her. She took a bite of the drumstick, and he handed the wine to her and said with a smile, "This is the best new Hong. It is very soft. Even if you drink a bottle, you won't get drunk." She blushed slightly. She knew that he was laughing at her for getting drunk the last time she took a sip. I don't. She shook her head. Mo Chuan had said that she could only drink when she was with him. She didn't know what kind of incredible things she would do when she was drunk, so it was best if she didn't drink. Chapter 542. A faint fruity fragrance floated into her nose and she suddenly felt a bit thirsty. She thought that if she drank a mouthful, she wouldn't get drunk, right? She was still a bit worried as she asked Chu Xiaobai, "Is this wine really very light?" He smiled, "Are you worried that I'll get drunk?" "Don't worry, even if you're drunk, I'll send you back safely." "Then let me try a mouthful." "All right." He gave the wine bottle to her. She carefully tasted a small mouthful. It was very sweet and did not have the taste of alcohol at all. She was assured and drank another mouthful, but she did not dare drink too much and only took a small taste. Quickly filling her stomach, she leaned against a flower tree and closed her eyes to rest. The entire valley was silent, so silent that she could hear the sound of petals falling to the ground. Her heart also became calm. This place was like a paradise, far away from the worries of the world. If she and Mo Chuan could be like this, stealing half a day of leisure, it would be a very pleasant matter. It's a pity that Mo Chuan could not do it. As the emperor, he had many important matters to take care of, so how could he have the time? With her eyes closed, she heard Chu Xiaobai's soft voice in her ears. Being with me today, are you happy? Yes. Then, do you want to be happy like this every day? He stared at her and held his breath. Of course I do. She almost blurted it out. Opening her eyes, she saw Chu Xiaobai's eyes filled with anticipation. She shook her head. Xiaobai, life is not just simple happiness, there should be many worries and worries. Of course I want to be happy like this for a lifetime, but I can't do it. She had already decided to be with Mo Chuan. She had to share Mo Chuan's burden and responsibilities, as well as his worries. Why can't you do it? As long as you want it, I can do it. I will make you happy like this every day. You like it here, don't you? You like being free and unrestrained, don't you? I've said it before, I will take you away. As long as you are willing to go with me, I will take you to the most beautiful place in the world to see the scenery, the sunrise, the sunset, and the tide. Don't say you don't like it, you can't hide it from me. He tightly held her hands and spoke in an excited voice. It was undeniable that his description was very beautiful, and every word was enough to move her. That was indeed what she liked, and also what she wanted. She wanted to travel the world and see the most beautiful scenery. But it was not with him. She stared into his clear eyes and could not bear to say anything that would make him sad. She only smiled and said, "Xiaobai, it's getting late. Let's go back." The light in his eyes dimmed for a moment. Then, he smiled and said, "All right, wait for me. The peach blossoms over there are so beautiful. I'll go pluck one for you to wear." She smiled and nodded, watching as his white robes fluttered in the wind. With a few leaps, he leaped up a cliff and began to climb the peach blossoms by the cliff. This Xiaobai was really strange. There were clearly peach blossom trees nearby, but he wanted to pick the flowers on the cliff. She looked away with a faint smile and reluctantly looked around at the blossoming trees. The wind blew and the fragrant snow covered the ground. It would be great if she could come here with Mo Chuan one day. She heard Chu Xiaobai's voice calling her from behind. She turned around with a smile. A shining dagger was stabbed into her chest. Chapter 543. The tip of the sword was incomparably sharp, bringing with it a bone-chilling chill and a slight pain. She gently lowered her eyes and looked at the dagger that was stuck in her chest. Her gaze slowly moved and landed on the slender and beautiful fingers that held the dagger. It was Chu Xiaobai's hand. She slowly raised her eyes and looked at Chu Xiaobai across from her. He was still wearing a snow-white robe and his elegant face was incomparably handsome, without a speck of dust on it, but the dagger in his hand was covered in blood. Xiaobai, it was the Empress Dowager who sent you to kill me, right? She looked up and revealed a faint smile at him, looking very beautiful. Yes. Chu Xiaobai was also smiling, but his eyes revealed a look of pain. His hand was slightly trembling. I already guessed it would be like this and I have been waiting for this moment. I was just curious why you waited until now to make a move. She continued to speak with a faint smile. Her voice was soft and her eyes were calm, without any fear. His hand trembled even more. Since you already guessed it, why did you come out with me? Because I wanted to know if you would make a move against me. She calmly said. Why aren't you afraid? Why aren't you screaming? Why aren't you crying for me to let you go? The smile on his face disappeared and he asked in a trembling voice. Why didn't you forcefully stab me? Why does your dagger only have a short sword tip? You know that you can't kill me like this. She did not answer and asked back, but the smile on her face did not diminish. Chu Xiaobai forcefully gritted his teeth. He suddenly threw the dagger in his hand and hugged her. He painfully said, you know that I can't do it. His body was trembling like a lost child. Chen Ning stroked his hair and gently said, Xiaobai, just kill me. I know that you have always been filial to the Empress Dowager and you have never disobeyed her orders. Dying under your hands is better than dying under someone else's hands. She picked up the dagger on the ground and placed it in his hand. No, I won't kill you. You know that I would rather kill myself than kill you. He threw the dagger far away. If you don't kill me, how will you report to the Empress Dowager? She gently asked. Chu Xiaobai gritted his teeth. He looked up and his eyes filled with determination. Ning, I will take you far away from the capital city, far away from West Chu. I will never take a single step into West Chu in my life. I don't know why Royal Grandmother can't tolerate you, but I won't let you die. I won't let. He bent down and picked her up, then walked towards the carriage. Ning, I've already arranged everything, I've already prepared this carriage. The road pass, jewelry, silver bills, clothes, and medicine are all on the carriage. We'll change our clothes and disguise ourselves, so no one will recognize us. In less than a month, we can safely leave West Chu. The world is big and we can roam freely. Chen Ning struggled in his chest. Xiao of me. Of Chen Ling, he her, Chen that you Ling. She would rather die than leave. She didn't want to leave Mo Chuan. However, her struggles were getting weaker and weaker. Her hands and feet were getting softer and softer. Stars danced in front of her as if the entire valley was flying in front of her eyes. Chapter 544. Chu Xiaobai's footsteps did not stop at all as he carried her all the way to the carriage. He had specially prepared a soft couch for her that was very thick and soft. He put her down on the couch and covered her with the brocade quilt. Then he carefully tidied up the hair on her temples. She bit her lips hard to maintain a trace of consciousness and didn't let herself fall asleep. What medicine did you give me? She asked him with wide eyes. She clearly used all her strength, but it sounded like a whisper, very weak. He gently looked at her and his clear smile was as gentle and harmless as before. It's just a little medicine to help you sleep, it won't harm your body at all. You just need to have a good sleep and leave everything else to me. Ning, I never thought of harming you. He lowered his head and gently kissed her forehead. Chen Ning did not even finish listening to him before she lost consciousness. Chu Xiaobai checked her breathing. Her breathing was calm and her pulse was normal. He knew that the medicine had taken effect and relaxed his heart. He took out a bag from under the carriage seat and opened it. There were several sets of coarse clothes inside. He quickly took off his white clothes and changed into the coarse clothes. Then he took out a disguising pill and applied it to his face. A moment later, that spotless and beautiful youth in snow-white clothes had turned into a carriage driver with a sallow complexion and coarse clothes. He believed that even if Chin Ning woke up, she wouldn't be able to recognize him. He gave a satisfied smile and jumped onto the carriage, driving it out of the valley. He had to leave this place before the sky darkened. He had to take her as far away as possible before the Emperor and the Empress Dowager sent people over. Only when the carriage left the valley, he saw a gray figure appear on the road in front of him and his heart sank. That gray figure was not a bystander, it was Shui Feng. Damn! Didn't he poke this fellow's acupuncture point? Why would he appear here? Chu Xiaoyang looked down and forcefully swung the horse whip. In a rough voice, he said, "Excuse me." Shui Feng looked over him a few times before moving to the side. Very good, this fellow really did not recognize him. Chu Xiaobai was very confident in his disguising skills. He drove the carriage and passed by Shui Feng. He deliberately pretended to be clumsy, like a country bumpkin that did not know martial arts. At the same time, he was secretly glad that he had spent a lot of effort on this carriage. It looked like a normal carriage from the outside, but the inside was different. The carriage left the mountain road and returned to the official road. Chu Xiaobai finally looked back and did not see Shui Feng's figure. He couldn't help letting out a sigh of relief and revealing a faint smile on his face. He turned back and raised his whip to slap the horse's butt. Then he smiled and said to himself, "Shui Feng, Shui Feng, Shui Feng, you are unparalleled in the world, but didn't you fall for my trick?" Thinking that he had fooling Shui Feng's eyes, his heart filled with pride. "Your Highness King Jing'an, aren't you looking down on this subordinate too much?" A faint voice filled with ridicule came from behind him. Chu Zhiwei. He Yang's hand holding not Chu's hand. Shui Feng was sitting on the roof of the carriage with his legs dangling in front of the door. His black leather boots were covered in mud as he swayed back and forth. When did this fellow get on the carriage? He actually did not notice it at all. Chapter 545. This subordinate should be asking King Jing'an this. What does your highness want to do? You've disguised yourself as a peddler, could it be you want to act like an actor and scare the emperor? Shui Feng narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. What this king wants to do has nothing to do with you. Shui Feng, leave for this king. This subordinate is under the emperor's orders to protect the princess, so wherever the princess goes, this subordinate will go. Chu Xiaobai stopped his horse. He only wanted to bring Chin Ning away. He did not want his beloved girl to be haunted by Shui Feng, this large candle. She no longer needs your protection. He silently looked at Shui Feng. Oh. Your highness means. Shui Feng's eyes turned. She's dead. Chu Xiaobai said word for word. What? Shui Feng was shocked. He jumped off the carriage and landed beside Chu Xiaobai. He was first stunned and then he shook his head in disbelief. Your highness shouldn't lie to this subordinate. This subordinate is not a 3-year-old child. Do you think this king is lying to you? Chu Xiaobai put down the horse whip and walked in front of the carriage, opening the curtain. See for yourself. Shui Feng looked into the carriage with a doubtful expression. Chen Ning was lying on the soft couch with a face as white as snow and hair as black as clouds. Her eyes were closed and there was a blanket covering her, looking like she was asleep. He revealed a smile. Your highness, do you think this subordinate can't tell the difference between a dead and a living person? The princess is clearly sleeping. The rest of his words were stuck in his throat, and his eyes widened in shock. Because Chu Xiaobai had walked over and slowly pulled open the blanket covering her. A shining dagger was deeply inserted into her chest. She was wearing a light blue robe with a peach blossom blossoming on her chest, looking very shocking. No, impossible. She. Princess. This subordinate. Shui Feng was so shocked that he was speechless. Now, do you still think this king is lying to you? This. Chu Xiaobai's face was very calm, but his eyes were filled with pain. He slowly kneeled down in front of the bed and caressed that snow-white face without a trace of blood. This was the Empress Dowager's order. This king didn't dare to disobey. I personally killed her, but she didn't feel any pain when she died. She was smiling because she never thought that this king would kill her. His finger landed on the corner of her lips. Her lips curled up slightly with a trace of a tranquil smile. Your Highness, don't you like her a lot? Shui Feng said in a hoarse voice. How could you have the heart to kill your beloved girl with your own hands? Yes, I like her, and I still like her. But the Empress Dowager wants her dead, so rather than letting others kill her, it would be better for me to do it myself. This way, she won't die in pain. Chu Xiaobai softly said. But Shui Feng could hear that his calm voice contained a lot of pain. He looked at Chu Xiaobai with a look of sympathy. Wind, she doesn't need your protection now, so you should go. Chu Xiaobai suddenly looked up and his pair of red eyes coldly looked at Shui Feng. Yes. Shui Feng said in a low voice. He turned around and took 2 steps, but he couldn't help turning back. Your Highness, what about you? Aren't you going back to the capital? The princess has already. You should let her rest in peace. Chapter 546. This king promised her that I would take her to see the beautiful scenery of the world. Now, no one can stop me and no one can take her away from me. I will stay by her side and always be by her side. His voice gradually became lower and 2 large teardrops fell from his chin, rolling down his clothes and falling into the dust. Shui Feng's heart was filled with bitterness, not knowing what this feeling was. He looked at Chu Xiaobai's idiotic eyes staring at her and felt like he was an extra person here. With a low sigh, he walked out of the carriage and jumped off. When he was prepared to leave, he suddenly heard Chu Xiaobai call him. Shui Feng. He stopped and turned around. A round thing fell into his chest and when he looked at it, he found it was an egg. You've chased me all the way, so you must be hungry. Take it with you on the road. Chu Xiaobai's voice came from the carriage. There was a trace of sobbing in his voice. Shui Feng's heart warmed up and he was very moved. Many thanks, Your Highness. There's another one here, I'll give it to you as well. Another round egg was tossed into his arms. Shui Feng was filled with gratitude. Your Highness, this subordinate. Quickly leave, this king does not want anyone to disturb her peace. The further you go the better. Shui Feng did not dare stay any longer. He placed the 2 eggs into his chest and used his qinggong to fly in the direction of the capital city. His heart was incomparably heavy. He had not completed the task his master had given him and had personally witnessed such a moving scene. He never would have thought that the always calm King Jing'an would be such an emotional person. He actually wanted to take his princess body to travel the world and see all the beautiful sceneries. But the princess was already dead, what could she see? Wasn't King Jing'an crazy? Moved, too moved. But what made him even more moved was that His Highness was this sad, thinking that he had not eaten yet, he had given him 2 hot eggs. Shui Feng reached into his chest and touched the 2 eggs. They were warm and filled his heart with warmth. His heart suddenly filled with guilt. His Highness treated him this well, but he had left traces of His Highness on the road. Should he erase all these traces? He was hesitating when he suddenly felt the eggs in his hands become hot, and they became hotter and hotter. What was going on? He couldn't help bringing the hot eggs to his eyes and carefully looking at them. Pang! Although the sound of the explosion came from far away, Chu Xiaobai could still hear it. I wanted to use it to blow up that brat He, but I never thought that brat Shui Feng would come to me. Originally, I wanted to use it to blast that brat He, but I didn't expect that brat Shui Feng to take the initiative to deliver it to me. If I don't let him have a taste of this thunderbolt egg, it would be too unfair to him. He turned around and helped Shen Ning put her hair that had been messed up by the wind to the back of her head. Then he took out the dagger that was stuck in her chest and pulled up the blanket for her. This extended and retracted dagger is really good at scaring people. Fortunately, I was prepared in advance, so I was able to fool that kid wind chaser. I think he must have been blown up beyond recognition, with only skin and hair left, right? Hey, wanting to fight with me, Chu Xiaobai, this brat is still too tender. He came out of the carriage and picked up the horse whip again. He quickly drove the carriage away. Chapter 547. His face was covered in ash and his hair was curled up, standing up straight. There were several large holes in his clothes, revealing his skin. His eyes were red and tears kept falling down. Chu Xiaobai, you're truly ruthless. Shui Feng gritted his teeth as he looked at the empty road. Although the 2 thunderbolt eggs did not injure him, his eyes had been burned by the gunpowder. His vision became blurry and he could no longer follow. He was in a dilemma. He did not know if he should return to the palace to report to his master or wait for his eyes to recover before continuing to follow. At the same time, there was a doubt in his heart. Was the princess consort dead or alive? When Chen Ning opened her eyes again, she found that she was in a strange place. The lamp in front of her was as small as a bean, the light was dim, and there was a tattered curtain hanging over her head. The bed she was lying on was also cold and hard, making her back ache from the cold. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. When did she become this weak? She was not used to sleeping on a hard bed. She wanted to sit up, but she found that her arms and legs were stiff. She couldn't even move her pinky. What happened to her? Her head was still a bit dizzy, but she remembered what happened before she fainted. It was Xiaobai. He had drugged her. Damn! Where did he bring her? Chu Xiaobai. Chu Xiaobai. She opened her mouth and forcefully shouted out. However, her tongue was also stiff. Even though she was using a lot of strength, she could only produce an indistinct murmur. In the next moment, she heard the door open with a "kia" sound. She wanted to turn her head, but she found that she couldn't even move her neck. She could only turn her eyes and look in the direction of the sound. A waxy yellow expressionless face entered her line of sight. It was an unfamiliar man wearing rough clothes and he was very tall. He carefully carried a large steaming bowl, which exuded a tempting aroma of food. As soon as she smelled the aroma, her stomach couldn't help but growl. Hearing her stomach growl, he turned to look at her and a look of joy flashed in his eyes. He placed the bowl in his hand on the table and quickly ran over to her. You're awake. He laid the palm of his hand on her forehead, touched her face, and his voice was full of joy. Then he drew her up and held her close to him. Chen Ning's head was pressed against his shoulder and her eyes were filled with confusion. She was clearly with Chu Xiaobai, so where did this man come from? That's right, she was dreaming, she had to be dreaming. If it wasn't a dream, then she had to be transmigrating again. It was just that she didn't know where she had transmigrated to this time, and what was the relationship between her current body and this strange man. She didn't know what she was thinking. That man released her and revealed a gentle smile to her as he asked, Ning, are you hungry? I've prepared something for you, but I'm not sure if you'll like it. Ning. She blinked her eyes. The body that she had transmigrated into was also called Ning. Who are you? She moved her lips and spat out a few indistinct words. The man looked at her and an apologetic look flashed in his eyes. He stroked her face and said, I'm sorry, I forgot that the drug on you hasn't passed yet. You can't speak or move for now, but it doesn't matter, I'll feed you. Chen Ning found that although his face was unfamiliar, his eyes and voice were very familiar. She blinked her eyes and immediately recognized it. Chapter 548. Bastard Xiao Bai. What did you do to me? What kind of drug did you give me? When will I be able to move? Where did you bring me? She opened her mouth and began to whimper. She wanted to question him, but she couldn't even hear the words that came out. Her eyes were wide open, looking at Chu Xiaobai like an angry little beast. He smiled and misunderstood her meaning. But are you hungry? Look at how wide your eyes are. All right, I'll feed you now. He helped her lean against the headboard and stuffed a pillow behind her. Then, he picked up the bowl and sat in front of the bed. It was a bowl of the most common noodle leaf soup. There were a few green onions sprinkled on it. Although it was simple, it was fragrant. This kind of food that she hadn't eaten in a long time made her stomach growl. Her face turned a little red and she felt very embarrassed. Chu Xiaobai resisted the urge to tease her. He scooped up a spoonful of noodles and placed it in front of her lips. Eat, he said in a soft voice. She forcefully closed her lips and looked to the side. Not eating. She wouldn't eat even if she starved to death. He had taken her away against her wishes, so she wouldn't eat his food no matter what. The smile on Chu Xiaobai's lips slowly became wider. This was the first time he had seen this kind of childish expression on her face, and it was indescribably cute. It made him want to tease her even more. He used the spoon to gently wipe her lips a few times and looked at her with a faint smile as he said, If you don't open your mouth, I'll feed you mouth to mouth. He deliberately moved closer to her, scaring her. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat and her face turned completely red. She immediately turned around to stare at him. You dare. She used her eyes to warn him. He immediately understood and said with a smile, If you don't want to eat, I'll use this method to feed you. Do you think I dare? He pretended to drink the noodle soup in his bowl. All right, she admitted defeat. He really was a member of the Chu family. When he acted like a rascal, he was just like Mo Chuan. They were both rascals to the extreme. Chen Ning gritted her teeth and could only open her mouth to drink a spoonful of noodles. That warm and fragrant noodle slid into her stomach and she felt an indescribable comfort. Is it good? His eyes revealed a look of joy. Humph. Chen Ning closed her eyes and ignored him. Chu Xiaobai revealed a smile. He was not angry at all as he continued to feed her. It was just that he was used to being a prince. His daily life was always taken care of by others, so how could he serve others? After feeding her a few spoonfuls, he accidentally scooped too much. His wrist trembled and some of the broth spilled onto her body. I'm sorry. He was afraid that he would burn her, so he quickly wiped it away. She didn't know that he was in a panic, which made it easier for him to make mistakes. The bowl of soup in his hand tilted, and more than half of the soup spilled onto her lapel. Ah! He did not know what to do. Fortunately, the bowl of noodle soup wasn't too hot and didn't burn her. It was just that the wet and sticky noodle soup stuck to her body, making her very uncomfortable. Chen of tu to shao Chen of chin. I'll help you dry it immediately. Chu Xiaobai's forehead was covered in sweat as he used his sleeves to wipe the broth off her body. After wiping a few times, he felt that something was wrong. His face instantly turned red to the back of his ears and his heart began to beat very fast. Chapter 549. You're not allowed to look. If you keep looking, I'll dig out your eyes. Chen Ning's face was also completely red. Of course she knew what Chu Xiaobai was looking at. She was angry and embarrassed as she stared at him. It was a pity that Chu Xiaobai couldn't see it. His breathing became faster and faster. His palms became hot and his throat became dry. Chu Xiaobai. She used almost all the strength in her body before she finally opened her mouth and spat out 3 words filled with anger. Chu Xiaobai's body trembled and he instantly came back to his senses from his thoughts. His face was red as he forcefully closed his eyes and anxiously said, I won't look, I really won't look. Don't be angry, actually, I didn't see anything. Blanket, cover me. Chen Ning forcefully spat out a few more words. Chu Xiaobai understood. He immediately pulled the blanket over and covered her body with it. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief and open his eyes. His face was very red and his heart was still beating fast. He lowered his head, not daring to look at her face. Chen Ning's face slowly calmed down. After all, she came from the modern era and did not care about the customs of the ancient women. For example, if a man that wasn't her husband touched her hand, she would have to chop it off. If a man saw her body, she would have to marry him. Antidote. She coldly said these 2 words. Chu Xiaobai looked up. His clear eyes were like a deer's, filled with innocence and apology. I will take responsibility for you. Don't be angry, all right? Responsibility. Taking responsibility again. He didn't do anything to her, what responsibility was there to take? Chen Ning couldn't help rolling her eyes at him. These ancient men, they would take responsibility when they met a girl they liked. If he didn't like her, it would be strange if he took responsibility. Antidote. She said again. There is no antidote. Chu Xiaobai looked a bit hesitant. Seeing her angry eyes staring at him, he quickly explained, what I gave you is not poison, it will just make your body temporarily stiff. You will naturally recover after a while, otherwise how could you fool that fellow Zhui Feng? His eyes are very sharp, he must think that you're dead right now. He will quickly bring this news back to the palace and make the Empress Dowager believe it. Don't worry, you can't move right now. You just need to sleep a bit more and you'll be able to move when you wake up. He slowly helped her lie down. Thinking of her wet clothes, he knew that she must be feeling very uncomfortable, so he said in a soft voice, I'll help you change your clothes, all right? I won't open my eyes, I'll close my eyes and help you change. I'll help you change. Don't worry. I can't look at you. Her ears buzzed and her mind was filled with the words Chu Xiaobai had just said. He had fed himself the fake death medicine to trick Zhui Feng, making Zhui Feng think he was dead. Then he sent the news to the royal palace, making Empress Dowager Zhou believe he was dead. Mo Chen Mo Tutu. He would give her the medicine to fake her death and trick Zhui Feng, making him think she was dead. Then he would send the news to the palace and make Empress Dowager Zhou believe she was dead. Chen Ning did not dare think about what Mo Chuan would do once he learned of this. Chen Ning did not dare think about it. What would Mo Chuan do when he found out? Her mind was filled with Mo Chuan. Her heart was filled with a crazy desire to go back, go back, go back. She came back to her senses and looked over. She found that her clothes had been taken off by Chu Xiaobai and he had his eyes closed, helping her take off her clothes. She came back to her senses and turned to look. She found that her clothes had been taken off by Chu Xiaobai and he was currently helping her take off her clothes with his eyes closed. Her heart was filled with fear. Chu Xiaobai. Chapter 550. He was actually taking advantage of her. Chen Ning was so angry that she almost bled from biting her teeth. If she could move, she would have bitten off a piece of his flesh without any hesitation. It was because he believed that she would not harm him that she was confident enough to travel with him. She never thought that the more gentle and harmless a person looked, the more ruthless he was. He was simply even more hateful than Chu Xiaoyang. Chu Xiaobai tightly closed his eyes, not seeing her angry eyes. He carefully helped her take off her wet clothes, afraid that he would accidentally touch her skin. He was holding his breath and had a serious expression on his face. He did not think of anything in his mind, and all his thoughts were thrown to the back of his mind. He was really just helping her change clothes. He was afraid that she would catch a cold, so his movements were light and quick. After taking off the wet clothes, he quickly helped her put on a new set of clothes and then pulled the blanket over her. He let out a sigh of relief and opened his eyes, revealing a smile to her. "All right, you can sleep a bit more comfortably like this." His eyes were as clear as water, without any impurities in them. Chen Ning couldn't help being stunned. He was just like this. He wasn't the kind of person she thought he was. He didn't have any dirty thoughts at all. "Why are your eyes so wide open? Don't you want to sleep? Then I'll talk to you for a bit, all right?" He pulled over a wooden stool and sat down beside her. He held his chin as he looked at her without blinking. Actually, he was very tired, but he could stay by her side. As long as he looked at her like this, he couldn't bear to close his eyes. Especially when he thought that from now on, she would always be by his side, inseparable from him. His heart swelled with joy, and every pore of his body was smiling. "Xiao Bai." She struggled to say these two words. She saw that his eyes were completely red and that he had smeared something on his face. His face was waxy yellow and she couldn't see his expression, but she knew that he must be very sleepy and tired. She originally hated and was angry with him, but seeing him like this, the resentment in her heart unconsciously dissipated. She knew that he had racked his brains to come up with such a plan for her. For her, he had abandoned his status as King Jing'an, abandoned his family, abandoned his homeland, and prepared to take her to the ends of the world. For her, he had sacrificed everything he had. Did she hate him? She found that she could not hate him. But Mo Chuan. Thinking of Mo Chuan, her heart filled with pain. It was like a sharp knife was stabbing into her heart, making it hard for her to breathe. What do you want to say?" Chu Xiaobai immediately looked down and gently looked at her. She moved her lips. "Send me back." Her voice was as soft as a whisper. However, he heard it, understood it, because his expression immediately changed, becoming firm and decisive. He held her face with his hands and forcefully shook his head. "No, Ning, I definitely won't send you back, because Imperial Grandmother will take your life. I don't need for anything, I just want you to live." After he finished speaking, he slowly laid down beside her, his head resting on her arm, not moving an inch. After a while, he began to snore evenly. Chen Ning knew that he must have fallen asleep. He fell. He actually fell asleep next to her. How could he sleep comfortably in such a position? Chapter 551. Xiao Bai. She opened her mouth. She wanted to wake him up, but she didn't say anything after thinking about it. Forget it, he must have rushed back from another place and received Empress Dowager Zhou's order without even resting. Then he immediately rushed over to take her away. So, he must be too tired. She would just let him sleep for a while without being disturbed. Chen Ning closed her eyes, she also wanted to sleep for a while. But her mind was filled with Mo Chuan's figure. Her heart felt like it was on fire, so how could she sleep? Mo Chuan, Mo Chuan. Her eyes stared right at the curtains on the bed as she kept calling out Imo Chuan's name in her heart. If their hearts were connected, he would definitely be able to hear her heart calling out to him. If he heard it, he would know that she wasn't dead. If he knew that she wasn't dead, would he be able to find her? Chen Ning's eyes slowly filled with a layer of moisture. She knew that he wouldn't be able to find her. Although Chu Xiaobai looked pure, as someone who grew up in the royal family, how could he be as pure and harmless as he looked? The truth was that not only was he smart, he was also very meticulous. He must have already prepared an escape route, making it so that no one would be able to find them. She slowly turned her eyes and looked around this strange and crude room. She knew that this was not an inn, but rather a farmhouse. Chu Xiaobai was indeed very smart. He knew that staying in an inn in the city would be the easiest way to leave clues, so he found a farmhouse to stay in. He had changed his appearance and even she couldn't recognize him, so how could she expect others to recognize him? Mo Chuan. You have to come. You have to find me. Suddenly, her ears twitched as if she had heard a faint sound. There was a mouse. Following that, her eyes blurred and there was an extra person in the room. That person's back was facing the candlelight and in the dim light, she could only see that this person was wearing tight black clothes. His back was straight and his legs were slender as he walked step by step towards the bed. He did not make a single sound. If she didn't personally see it, she would not have heard the sound of that person's footsteps. Her heart was pounding nervously, and her eyes were wide open as she stared straight at that person. Was it Mo Chuan? Was he Mo Chuan? If he wasn't Mo Chuan, then who was he? Would he hurt Xiaobai? Chen Ning forcefully bit her lips, not knowing if she should wake Chu Xiaobai or not. Suddenly, that person's face tilted slightly, and the dim candlelight shone on his face. That extremely familiar brows and eyes were like distant mountains and rivers, and his deep and serene eyes were like unmeltable ink. The rims of her eyes became hot, and tears immediately flowed out. He was Mo Chuan. He had finally found her. Mo Chuan raised his finger at her and made a gesture for her to keep quiet. She blinked to show that she understood and then held her breath. Chu Xiaobai was in a deep sleep, not noticing that there was another person in the room at all, nor did he hear Mo Chuan's footsteps. He was very tired and his mind was very relaxed. He never would have dreamed that Mo Chuan would find them this quickly. Mo Chuan suddenly made a move and gently tapped Chu Xiaoxian's point, and Xiaobai was. Chu Xiaobai was already in a deep sleep and adding in his acupuncture point ceiling, he would need at least 10 to 12 hours to wake up. Chapter 552. Mo Chuan had a complicated expression. Although he hated Chu Xiaobai for coming up with this stupid idea of taking Chen Ning away, he knew that this fellow was doing this for her good, so he didn't blame him. Adding in the fact that he and Chu Xiaobai were around the same age and were uncle and nephew, they were like brothers, so he couldn't bear to blame him. But thinking of how this fellow acted on his own and almost took away his beloved girl, he didn't want to let Chu Xiaobai off so easily. Thinking about it, he decided to let him have a good sleep. When he woke up and found that she was gone, he would be left to worry about. Ning, what's wrong? Are you injured? Mo Chuan quickly found that Chen Ning's body was stiff in his embrace, not moving at all. He thought that her acupuncture point had been poked, but when he checked her pulse, it was normal. The medicine effect hasn't passed. Chen Ning's lips moved. He nodded, let's leave this place first. He carried her as he pushed open the door. Under the moonlight, there was a gray figure standing in the yard. Seeing this person, Chen Ning was instantly shocked. Did this person just get struck by lightning? She blinked her eyes several times before recognizing him. This person who had been blown up beyond recognition was actually Zhui Feng. His current appearance was very embarrassing and funny, it was not the respectful but arrogant appearance he had in front of her before. She turned her eyes and understood what had happened. She secretly laughed at Xiao Bai for doing a good job. This fellow had taken advantage of Xiao Ru and couldn't wait to push the blame away, making her angry. She wanted to give him a few thunderbolt eggs to have a taste. The horse carriage that Chu Xiaobai had brought her was parked in the yard. Mo Chuan carried her into the carriage and Zhui Feng also jumped in, sitting in the driver's seat. With a wave of his whip, the horse stepped into the moonlight, leaving the farmhouse and heading for the capital city. In the carriage, there was only him and her. The sky was not bright yet, only the silver moonlight shined through the window, creating a faint white veil over their bodies. He stared deeply into her eyes. Those eyes almost melted her, making her face turn red and her heart beat faster. Not long ago, she was filled with despair. She thought that she would never see him again, but she never thought that in the blink of an eye, he would appear in front of her. She almost suspected that she was dreaming. A sweet and intoxicating feeling filled her eyes. She also looked at him in a daze, unwilling to close her eyes. What if this was a dream and she suddenly woke up? Ning, I knew I would find you. Now, I have finally found you. He hugged her tightly in his arms, hugging her so tightly that she couldn't breathe. She pressed her face against his chest and listened to his heart beating fast and forcefully in his chest. Her eyes became moist. This was the world she wanted. The world she wanted was not to roam around the world, but to be in his embrace. If she didn't like Mo Chuan, if she was still the same as before, then without a doubt, everything Chu Xiaobai described would be what she wanted, but the situation was different now. Her heart was already given to Mo Chuan, so wherever he was, she would be there. His world was her world. Mo Chuan, Mo Chuan. She called out his name in a low voice. Her arms slowly wrapped around his waist, tightly hugging him. Ning, you can move. His body slightly trembled as he was filled with surprise and joy. Chapter 553. Mo Chuan, how did you find me? She looked up at him from his embrace. Although her tongue was still a bit numb, she could already speak clearly. Her hands and feet were soft, but they were still a bit stiff. With Zhui Feng here, no matter where you go, I can find you. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, I will definitely find you. He said in a soft voice, but it was filled with power. It was like a vow that made her heart heat up. But I'm afraid you'll think I'm dead. I'm afraid you won't come to find me, she said in a low voice. Her nose felt sour as she buried her face in his chest. Silly girl, you won't die. I understand Xiao Bai better than you, he definitely won't harm you. So, I know that he must have taken you away, so I chased you through the night. He stroked her black hair and said with a faint smile. Although his voice was calm, she did not know that when he first heard this news, it was like a bolt out of the blue, completely shocking him. At that time, the royal palace was holding a banquet to entertain the East Qin envoys. The banquet was filled with laughter and the atmosphere was solemn and warm. Empress Dowager Zhou also rarely attended the banquet. She was smiling at him the entire time, sitting beside him and lovingly patting his hand from time to time. At this time, he received a secret report from the secret guards and his expression suddenly changed. This one is not feeling well, everyone please enjoy yourselves. After he said this, he left the banquet without any hesitation. He did not see Empress Dowager Zhou's ugly expression and shock at all. Emperor, stop. Empress Dowager Zhou snapped from behind him. But he turned a deaf ear to her. This was probably the first time he had disobeyed Empress Dowager Zhou's orders. He quickly changed out of his golden dragon robe and quickly rode out of the capital city, following the trail Zhui Feng left behind. Although he believed that Chu Xiaobai would not harm her, when he heard the news of her death, his heart shattered. no one knew how much pain he felt. There was only one thought in his mind at that time, which was to find her. He had to find her no matter what. He had to see her alive, he had to see her dead. He did not dare think about it. He knew that she wasn't dead, she definitely wasn't dead. Now, he could finally hug her again. Feeling her soft and fragrant body in his embrace, the joy of regaining what he had lost flooded him. His heart was filled with warmth and satisfaction. As long as he had her, he could give up anything. The two of them tightly hugged each other. There had never been a moment where their hearts were this close. Shui Feng, stop the carriage. The carriage came to a stop. Mo Chuan jumped off the carriage and caught her. He held her hand and walked up the hill to the side. A forest of pear blossoms bloomed on the hillside. The pear blossoms bloomed beautifully under the moonlight. Mo Chuan, where are we going? Shui, Mo, and Shui. Mo Chuan. Under a blooming tree, she leaned against it and raised her head to look at him. The starlight in the sky gathered in her eyes, and her gaze was intoxicated. Under the moonlight, his exquisite side profile was flawless. He slowly lowered his head and leaned forward to kiss her lips, under the moonlight, his face. Under the same, he. Chapter 554. This scene, it was as beautiful as a painting. Shui Feng, who was waiting at the foot of the mountain, glanced over and couldn't help being stunned. He had never understood love, and he had never understood entanglement. But at this moment, he felt a stirring sensation in his heart. His stone-like heart also began to stir. If he could hug a girl like this under the moonlight in the flower forest, what kind of intoxicating taste would that be? He couldn't help letting his imagination run wild. Coo, he seemed to be thinking too much. His face turned red as he looked away. His pupils suddenly shrank as he looked not far away in a daze. There was a tall and slender pine tree there. Under the tree, there was a person standing motionlessly. His clothes were as white as frost. The wind blew the corner of his robe, making it look like a white butterfly. It was very eye-catching in the night. That was Chu Xiaobai. When he appeared and when he chased after them, Shui Feng did not notice it at all. Shui Feng suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He looked at Chu Xiaobai and his lips moved, but he found that Chu Xiaobai was not looking at him at all. His eyes were looking at the two people tightly hugging and kissing under the tree on the hillside. The two of them had their eyes closed and were immersed in each other's aura, forgetting themselves. The moonlight was like a white veil, adding a faint silver to their beautiful faces. Chu Xiaobai silently watched. He did not know how long he watched for, but he saw the two people tightly hugging each other finally separate. He saw him raise his hand to caress her rosy lips and softly say 3 words. "You are really sweet." The voice was soft and it was far away, but Chu Xiaobai could hear it, and he could hear it very clearly. Then he saw her smile. Her smile was very beautiful under the moonlight. She stood on her tiptoes and wrapped her arms around his neck. He thought she was going to kiss him, but she unexpectedly bit his ear. His face turned slightly red and he pretended to scare her. Her laughter rang out like a silver bell. Chu Xiaobai's eyes unknowingly became covered in a layer of mist. He was tightly holding a wooden snow lotus hairpin that he had personally carved for her. This hairpin had always been in her hair. But she didn't even know when she had lost it. His heart was filled with mixed feelings and his chest was filled with pain. There was a fire burning inside, burning his entire body and burning him to the point of suffocating. He understood everything. But it seemed like he understood it a bit too late. That black-clothed guard, that bastard Xiao He, he was not someone else, he was his blood-related uncle, he was the current West Chu emperor. What should he do? His mind was a wasteland. Weeds were growing, wildfires were burning, until he felt a dull pain in his palm. He lowered his head and discovered that his palm had become a bloody mess. That coarse wooden hairpin had hurt his hand. Was it painful? Was it painful? Compared to the wound on his chest, the pain on his palm was nothing. King Jing'an. King Jing'an Shui Feng called him several times, but Chu Xiaobai did not hear him at all. In his eyes and ears, there was only the person under the pear blossom tree. Other than her, he could not hear anything else. Shui Feng couldn't help shaking his head. He tore off a piece of cloth and walked in front of Chu Xiaobai, preparing to bandage the wound on his hand. Chapter 555. Chu Xiaobai quietly stood under the tree, not moving at all. If it wasn't for him smelling the faint scent of blood in the air, he would not have noticed that Chu Xiaobai was injured. And the thing that injured him was actually an unremarkable piece of broken wood. What kind of broken thing is this? Shui Feng took the wooden hairpin from Chu Xiaobai's hand and looked at it without a care, preparing to throw it away. Chu Xiaobai suddenly reached out and grabbed it, firmly holding it in his hand. His eyes were like ice as he stared at him. What are you doing? This subordinate wants to help you bandage your wound. Shui Feng was stunned and stuttered out. No need. Chu Xiaobai coldly said. After he said this word, he looked away and stared at the person in the flower forest in a daze. Shui Feng was truly worried for him. He felt that if King Jing'an wasn't crazy, then he was a fool. If it was him, seeing his beloved girl being intimate with another man, he would not have been able to endure it. He would have already charged forward and asked if he wanted to kill him or her. But what about King Jing'an? He was clearly feeling very uncomfortable, but he did not leave. He just stared at her like this. Wasn't he just looking to be abused? Shui Feng began to feel uncomfortable for him. Although he was loyal to Mo Chuan, he had formed a deep brotherhood with Chu Xiaobai over the years. Especially after the two of them went through life and death together a few days ago. Seeing Chu Xiaobai like this, he couldn't bear it. King Jing'an, King Jing'an. He called out to him again. Chu Xiaobai still did not hear him. This was because he saw that the two people under the flower tree were no longer smiling. They were deeply looking at each other. Chu Xiaobai had never seen this kind of focus in her eyes, this kind of deep affection. She was using this kind of deep and focused gaze to look at the man in front of her. It turned out that when a person loved another deeply, her eyes would betray her heart. He had used this kind of gaze to look at her before, but she had never used this kind of gaze to look at him before. Chu Xiaobai's heart slowly turned to ice. Shui Feng, who was standing beside him, suddenly gave a shiver, feeling an inexplicable chill. He shrank his neck and muttered, "Where did the wind come from?" Turning around, he looked at Chu Xiaobai. Although the other side was not moving, the more he was like this, the more uncomfortable he felt for Chu Xiaobai. King Jing'an, stop looking. The wind is strong here, let's go. I'm not leaving. Against his expectations, Chu Xiaobai actually spoke. Shui Feng was stunned and then said, King Jing'an, please forgive this subordinate for advising you. Staying here will only make you feel uncomfortable. Is there a need to do this? There are plenty of fish in this world, why do you have to be like this? There are plenty of flowers in this world, why do you have to be so attached? Chu Xiaobai's eyes were still on Qin Ning's face, not looking away at all. His voice was very calm and his eyes were as clear as usual. I'm not uncomfortable, I'm very happy. Who would he be moving? Shut. The moonlight was like silver as it shined through the pine branches. He could clearly see the faint tears in Chu Xiaobai's eyes. Zhe, you're already crying, but you still say you're not feeling bad and are very happy. Do you think Shui Feng is blind? He crying of happy. Chapter 556. The sound of the wind blowing through the trees let out a sobbing sound. I've always been worried that she wouldn't be happy, so I wanted to give all of this to her. Now that I see that she has it all, what else can I ask for? Although the one who makes her happy isn't me, it doesn't matter. As long as she's happy, it's fine. Chu Xiaobai suddenly spoke. His voice was very soft, like he was telling Zhui Feng or himself. Zhui Feng couldn't help digging his ears. He carefully observed Chu Xiaobai's expression and asked, "You're not angry, not jealous, and not angry?" He did not see any of these expressions on Chu Xiaobai's face. This was not normal. Chu Xiaobai revealed a faint smile. "I like her, but I don't want to have her. If she isn't happy with me, I will be sad. I hope to see her smile more often. As for who she likes, that is not important, as long as she's happy, it's fine." He revealed a bright smile, saying words from the bottom of his heart. There was a kind of love that was as silent as a mountain, not asking for anything in return. He didn't understand it before, but now he understood. He loved her and she didn't love him, he really didn't care. He would treat her the same as before, placing her in the deepest and most important place in his heart to love her. Zhui Feng was stunned. He shook his head and felt like he was confused by Chu Xiaobai. He could not understand Chu Xiaobai's thoughts. If his beloved girl was with another man, he would take her back no matter what. He did not want to be as useless as King Jing'an. "Don't tell them I came." Chu Xiaobai took a deep breath and looked at her under the moonlight again. Her brows were filled with a smile and he had never seen her this beautiful before. It was like the most beautiful pear flower blooming under the moonlight. Although her smile was not for him, he had deeply engraved this beautiful smile in his mind, never forgetting it. Turning around, his clothes fluttered as he left. He only left behind a single sentence. What he took away was the snow lotus hairpin that he had personally carved for her. Only when he turned around, a drop of crystal clear tear fell from the corner of his eye. It slid down his clothes and fell to the ground. Mo Chuan suddenly left, abandoning all the guests. Empress Dowager Zhou felt that this matter was not good. In fact, she had received the news before Mo Chuan did. When she found out that her greatest trouble had been taken care of, she let out a long sigh of relief and came to the banquet tonight in high spirits. Although she thought of Chen Ning's talent, she felt a bit of regret in her heart. She felt that it was a bit unfair to this girl. But who told her to provoke the emperor out of everyone? She would order people to give her a grand funeral, which would be the best compensation for her. At the banquet, she was very kind to Mo Chuan. She hoped that Mo Chuan would learn this news as late as possible. She also hoped that after her son learned of this, he wouldn't do anything too ridiculous. She never thought that the news she tried so hard to hide would still reach Mo Chuan's ears. She knew that there was only one reason why the emperor would abandon everything and leave the royal palace. The emperor out a sigh, and said, of. She stayed behind with a smile on her face, comforting the ministers and the East Qin envoy. She was graceful and her words were appropriate, fully displaying the dignity and grace of an empress dowager. But after the banquet, before she even arrived at the Peaceful Life Palace, the smile on her face disappeared. Her lips turned into a line and her face turned livid. "Where's the emperor?" Chapter 557. Su Jin had never seen Empress Dowager Zhou with such a serious expression before and her heart was filled with anxiety. She did not know about Empress Dowager Zhou's orders, but she could faintly feel that something big was about to happen. He left the city. Humph, so what if he arrives? It's already too late. It's fine, it's better if he sees it with his own eyes. Empress Dowager Zhou stared at the palace in the distance for a while before finally looking away. She rubbed her aching forehead and decided to go back to the palace to sleep first. Su Jin did not understand Empress Dowager Zhou's words. She helped Empress Dowager Zhou sleep, kneeling by the bed and massaging Empress Dowager Zhou's forehead. Empress Dowager Zhou tossed and turned for most of the night. When the sun was about to rise, she finally fell asleep in a daze. Su Jin quietly stood up and rubbed her numb knees. Then she quietly left Empress Dowager Zhou's room. She had been tired for a day and night, so she prepared to return to her room to sleep. But when she left the room, she suddenly saw 2 more people in the yard and she almost screamed out in fright. "Emperor, Emperor! Princess Consort, why are you here?" She calmed herself down and recognized them, covering her mouth as she spoke in a small voice. "You can leave." Mo Chuan held Qin Ning's hand. He did not look at Su Jin and just stared at Empress Dowager Zhou's window. It was dark inside, so Empress Dowager Zhou should already be asleep. Su Jin did not dare stay. She bowed to him and silently returned to her room. Mo Chuan, the Empress Dowager is already asleep. How about we leave first and don't disturb the Empress Dowager's sleep? Chen Ning bit her lips and her expression was a bit uneasy. After he brought her back to the capital, he immediately entered the palace and rushed to the Peaceful Life Palace. Even she did not understand what he wanted to do or what he wanted. Was he here to ask why Empress Dowager Zhou gave the order to kill her? But she understood Empress Dowager Zhou and understood a mother's love for her son, so she did not blame Empress Dowager Zhou. She did not want the mother and son to fall out because of her. "No, I'm not leaving. I want to wait here for mother to wake up." Mo Chuan held her hand with a firm gaze. Then he faced Empress Dowager Zhou's room and kneeled down. His back was straight. Although he was kneeling, he gave off a feeling of being a mountain. "Mo Chuan, what are you doing?" Mo Chuan remained silent. He had already made up his mind that he had to be with her no matter what. She was someone he doted on the most, he couldn't even bear to harm a single finger of hers, but Empress Dowager Zhou actually ordered people to take her life. Therefore, he must let his mother know that his people were not to be touched. Chen Ning looked at his expression without blinking. She understood his thoughts and gently and firmly knelt down beside him. "Ning, this is not related to Bai. Ning." Dowager Dao Ning looked at Jean. "You disobeyed the Empress Dowager for me. How can you say it has nothing to do with me?" "Ning is," Emperor Yun Dowager said. She said, "You is not." "Long," Shi Ning said. Dowager Li said, "She, I. Dao Shi I, Ning. Yun, A. Chapter 558. Her lips were soft and cool, but it instantly ignited a flame in his body. He worked hard to control the flames in his body as he gently kissed her lips, not daring to go any deeper. He opened his eyes and stared at her beautiful face. Her long eyelashes were thick and curled up, gently trembling. Because of his kiss, her breathing became hurried and a faint layer of shyness appeared on her face. At this time, the sky was bright. The eunuchs and maids of the Peaceful Life Palace had already gotten up and were cleaning the courtyard. There was the sound of footsteps coming from all around. Someone was coming. Chen Ning's face turned red and she wanted to push him away, but he grabbed her chin without letting go. His hand was tightly wrapped around her waist as he slightly lowered his head and moved his lips over hers. God! Did their eyes go bad? Was she dreaming? There were sounds of cold breaths being sucked in from all around. When the eunuchs and maids saw this scene in the courtyard, their jaws fell and their eyes fell to the ground. They all knew Qin Ning, knowing that she was King Ding Yuan's princess and that she had lived in the Empress Dowager's palace for a few days. They all knew the emperor. But what did they see? The emperor was actually publicly intimate with King Dingyuan's princess. Each one of them received a 10,000 critical hit. But very quickly, they realized that they had seen something they shouldn't have seen. This was a matter of losing their heads. The maids and eunuchs all looked down, not daring to breathe too loudly. It was like their butts were on fire as they disappeared in the blink of an eye. Empress Dowager Zhou was a light sleeper. She took a nap and slightly opened her eyes. Seeing the white light from the window, she knew that it was morning. She thought of her troublesome son. After all, mother and son were connected, so she couldn't sleep anymore. Someone come. She called out, preparing to call someone in to help her wash up. She wanted to see if the emperor had returned or not. Who would have thought that when she called out twice, the courtyard outside would still be silent, without a single movement? Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help feeling angry. Were all the people serving her dead? She came down from the bed and opened the window. When she was prepared to call out, her body suddenly trembled and she almost couldn't stand straight. She quickly held onto the window frame. Under the early morning sunlight, there were two figures kneeling in the courtyard in front of her door. The man's black hair was covered in a layer of golden light. He had his head lowered and was wholeheartedly kissing the girl in his embrace. Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help rubbing her eyes. When she was sure that she wasn't dreaming, she was instantly filled with rage. This. They were simply provoking her on purpose, demonstrating their strength. No wonder she couldn't summon any palace maids to serve her. Everyone who saw this scene had already hidden far away. Who would dare to come? No wonder she couldn't call out the maids. It was on purpose. Coming to her courtyard early in the morning to put on this show, it was obvious that he wanted to make their affair known to the public and let the whole world know about it. It wouldn't be long before she couldn't hide the scandal of the imperial family anymore. She couldn't. Emperor, you. Mo Chuan finally slowly looked up at Empress Dowager Zhou, kneeling on the ground without moving. Mother, your son is here to ask for your forgiveness. Empress Dowager Zhou's forehead began to throb with pain. She wished she could take her dragon head cane and beat the man and woman in front of her to death. Chapter 559. If mother doesn't forgive your son will kneel here and not get up. Mo Chuan tightly held Qin Ning's hand. He raised his chin and spoke in a calm voice. Forgive. Forgive him for being in her courtyard early in the morning, being intimate with his niece's wife in front of all the eunuchs and maids. Empress Dowager Zhou gave an angry laugh. She pointed at Mo Chuan and said, "All right, Emperor, this widow has really given birth to a good son. You've actually learned to disobey this widow now." Mo Chuan's eyes darkened, but he instantly looked up and said, "Your son does not dare disobey mother, but has mother ever thought about your son? You sent people to kill your son's most beloved person, have you never thought that your son's heart would be hurt? If mother cannot tolerate her, then your son would not dare disobey mother's will. Your son has brought the person to mother. As long as mother says a single word, your son will personally kill her." Empress Dowager Zhou almost did not believe her ears. She stared at Mo Chuan. "Emperor, a ruler does not lie. You will personally kill her?" Mo Chuan nodded and took out a dagger from his chest. The blade reflected the sunlight, shining like snow. "Very good, then you can kill her." Empress Dowager Zhou gave a cold laugh. "Your son will obey mother's orders." Mo Chuan calmly kowtowed to Empress Dowager Zhou. "Your son is not willing to be a disloyal and unfilial person, but your son cannot be a heartless person. Since it is hard to satisfy both sides, the only thing your son can do is to kill your son." He raised the dagger and with a flash of white light, the dagger was already stabbed into his chest. His chest was instantly dyed red with blood. Chuan Empress Dowager Zhou was incomparably shocked. She gave a loud shout and charged out of the room. Mo Chuan's face was even whiter than snow. The dagger was deeply stabbed into his chest, but he still knelt down. His deep black eyes looked at Empress Dowager Zhou. He let go of the dagger and used his blood-red hand to reach out to Empress Dowager Zhou. He supported Empress Dowager Zhou's swaying body. "Doctor, quickly. Quickly call the doctor." Empress Dowager Zhou's voice trembled. She looked down at Mo Chuan and tears fell from her eyes. "Chuan, she is just a woman. What kind of woman can't you have in this world? You actually don't want your life for her. Why are you so stupid?" She was angry and hurt. Mo Chuan gave a soft cough and blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. "Mother, if I can't be with the person I love the most in this life, this minister would rather not have this life." You. Empress Dowager Zhou's lips moved, but her eyes suddenly turned black and she fainted. Empress Dowager Mother. Mo Chuan quickly caught Empress Dowager Zhou and lifted her up, quickly running into the room. He placed Empress Dowager Zhou on the bed and checked her breathing. He found that her breathing was normal, so she must have fainted from being too emotional. However, he was still worried and loudly ordered, "Someone, summon the imperial physician." The palace attendants of Peaceful Life Palace were in chaos. Quickly go to the doctor yard to find Dr. Zhang. When Su Jin, who was still in a daze, heard this, she immediately woke up from her dream in fright. She didn't even have time to put on her shoes as she ran to Empress Dowager Zhou's room. She immediately saw Empress Dowager Zhou lying on the bed with her eyes closed. Chapter 560. Su Jin gave a shocked cry before seeing Mo Chuan with a dagger in his chest, standing in front of Empress Dowager Zhou's bed with his chest covered in blood. She was so scared that she gave a sob and almost fainted. Chen Ning quickly took a step forward and supported her. She said to Mo Chuan, "This joke has gone too far. The Empress Dowager has fainted from fright and you've even scared Aunt Su Jin." She turned to look at Su Jin. "Aunt Su Jin, don't be afraid, this is fake. The Emperor is fine." Su Jin stared at the dagger in Mo Chuan's chest and said in a trembling voice, "Fake? What fake? Emperor, why are you? Why is it like this?" Her voice was filled with surprise. This was because she saw Mo Chuan grab the dagger and pull it out, causing her to give a loud cry. But then she found that the dagger did not have a blade and only had a handle. Her eyes instantly popped out and her face was filled with disbelief. This. She stuttered. "This dagger is fake. There is a button on the handle and with a gentle press, the blade will pop out. With another gentle press, the blade will retract into the handle, so it looks like he has been stabbed, but the Emperor is not injured at all." Chen Ning explained in a low voice. This dagger was the one Chu Xiaobai used to scare her. The blade was hollow and there was a blood sac hidden inside. When the blade was pulled back, the blood sac would burst open, looking no different from being stabbed by a sword. Only the person in question would know what was inside. She didn't know where Chu Xiaobai found this strange thing. Even she had to admit that this effect was very realistic. If she didn't know there was a dagger like this, she would have also believed it. Su Jin was still in shock. She looked at Mo Chuan and then at Empress Dowager Zhou, her head filled with fog. "Aunt Su Jin, the Emperor has something to say to the Empress Dowager, so we should leave first." Chen Ning saw Empress Dowager Zhou's eyelids slightly move, which was a sign that she was about to wake up. She pulled Su Jin's sleeve and quietly left with her. Before leaving, she also looked at Mo Chuan. Mo Chuan gave her a slight nod. Empress Dowager Zhou slowly woke up. When she opened her eyes, she saw Mo Chuan. Her body trembled and she said in a trembling voice, "Chuan, did we meet in the underworld? Mother, please forgive your son for deceiving you." Mo Chuan slowly kneeled down in front of her bed. What crime of lying? Mo Chuan raised the dagger with both hands and held it in front of Empress Dowager Zhou. There was still blood on the blade, and when Empress Dowager Zhou saw this, her heart filled with pain. "Please forgive me, Imperial Mother. I used this dagger to play a joke on Imperial Mother." Mo Chuan gently pressed down on the hilt and the sharp edge of the sword was pulled back. He pressed down again and with a hshwa sound, the blade popped out with a cold glow. Empress Dowager Zhou didn't need him to say another word to understand what had just happened. She was filled with anger as she stared at Mo Chuan. She suddenly raised her hand and with a paw sound, slapped him across the face. "Emperor, how dare you make fun of me?" There were 5 red finger marks on Mo Bai's face, but he didn't even blink as he looked right at Empress Dowager Zhou. Chapter 561. Empress Dowager Zhou's face turned white from anger. She angrily said, "Emperor, are you threatening this widow? Your son does not dare threaten Mother. You don't dare. Why did you put on that play just now? You still dare say you didn't threaten me with death?" Mo Chuan knelt in front of the bed. He held Empress Dowager Zhou's hand and looked up to say, "Mother, seeing your son commit suicide, does your heart ache? Your son knows that your heart must be filled with pain, do you know that? When your son learned that you sent people to assassinate Ning, your son's heart was filled with pain just like yours. Mother, your son is your own flesh and blood. Seeing your son's heart ache, does your heart feel good? Why can't you let us go and help us?" Empress Dowager Zhou forcefully pulled back her hand and angrily said, "I'll help you. You want this widow to help you become a joke, a scandal. Emperor, if you continue to be so obstinate, then you might as well die just now." Mo Chuan's eyes turned dark and he said in a low voice, "Mother, do you really want your son to die?" He pressed down on the mechanism of the dagger and stopped the blade from bouncing back. He slowly raised it up and placed it at his throat. "Put down the dagger." Empress Dowager Zhou was angry and anxious as she tried to grab the dagger in his hand. Her eyes turned red and tears began to fall. This widow was just saying it out of anger and you treated it seriously. Emperor, have you ever understood this widow's heart as a mother? She was so angry that she kept coughing and almost couldn't breathe. But when has Mother ever understood your son's heart? Mo Chuan said in a hoarse voice. Could it be that the country, the safety of the country, your throne, the West Chu citizens, and this widow are all not as important as that woman? Mother, if your son doesn't want to be the emperor, there will definitely be someone else, but the world is big and your son only wants to be with her for the rest of his life. If Mother wants your son to choose, your son would rather not be the emperor. I ask Mother to choose another wise ruler." Mo Chuan took out a seal from his chest and presented it with both hands. This seal was the West Chu country's jade seal. Empress Dowager Zhou's body trembled as she stared at Mo Chuan, Emperor. She was anxious and angry, and her head began to hurt again, because she knew her son. Although he was filial and had never disobeyed her words, his personality was one that would rather break than bend. Once he decided on something, he would definitely do it to the end. He didn't even want the throne anymore. It looked like he had made up his mind to be together with that lass with the surname Shin. What should she do? What should she do? She rested her forehead on her hand, leaned on the couch behind her, and closed her eyes. Your Majesty, even if I spare the girl's life, can you stop the mouths of the people in the world? Mo Chuan was instantly filled with joy. He knew that Empress Dowager Zhou had finally relented. Qin Dowager Qin Dowager Chen's heart, Chen's heart. Dowager Chen, your idea is just to send down a decree to separate King Dingyuan and his princess. Do you think it's that easy? You know better than this widow what kind of person Chu Xiaoyang is. If he doesn't want it, he will throw it away. If it was the Chu Xiaoyang of the past, this decree would have been something he wished for, but now he already sees that girl Chin as his eyeball. You want to gouge out his eyeball, so how could he let this go? Chapter 562. She knew that if she forced her son would very likely leave the throne and take his beloved girl to the ends of the earth. At that time, she would lose everything. Without her son, she would have nothing. So she had to compromise for now and help her son plan. Then, does mother have any good ideas? Mo Chuan was silent for a bit. He knew that Empress Dowager Zhou was speaking the truth, but he couldn't care about Chu Xiaoyang right now. He had to fight for Empress Dowager Zhou's approval first, and as long as Empress Dowager Zhou agreed, he would slowly think of a way to solve the problems in the future. You're the emperor, if you don't have any ideas, then what can this widow do? No. Empress Dowager Zhou rolled her eyes at him and said in a snappy voice. Since it's like this, then mother should have a good rest. Your son will leave first. The East Qin envoys were very aggressive at the banquet yesterday, so your son will find the ministers to discuss how to deal with them. Mo Chuan also knew how to prioritize things. He and Chen Ning's matter was not urgent, the most important thing right now was to solve the East Qin tribute. This was a matter that couldn't be delayed. Alright, you can go. Empress Dowager Zhou waved her hand, feeling a bit comforted in her heart. No matter what was said, this son of hers did not ignore politics for his own sake. Wait a minute. She thought about it and then called out to Mo Chuan, leave that girl behind for this widow. Before the East Qin matter is solved, this widow will personally take care of her. This won't do. Mo Chuan refused without even thinking. Why not? Are you afraid this widow will make a move on that girl? Since this widow has promised you, I will keep my word. This widow will not make a move on her, otherwise, isn't this widow afraid of losing a son like you? Empress Dowager Zhou revealed a faint bitter smile. How could she not know that leaving Chen Ning by her side was equal to leaving a hot potato, but she had to leave her. The scene she saw this morning had given her a large shock. The emperor had never been close to women, but in front of everyone and in broad daylight, he did something that made her blush. Would she still dare to leave that girl by the emperor's side? Young men and women, when they were in love, it was like dry wood meeting fire. What else couldn't they do? She definitely would not allow this kind of thing to happen in front of her. Mo Chuan thought about it and already guessed Empress Dowager Zhou's meaning, but he still shook his head. No. Empress Dowager Zhou's eyes instantly turned sharp and her voice became sharp. Have you already? I didn't. Mo Chuan said with a serious expression, before I formally marry her, your son will not do anything improper, please be assured, mother. Rest assured. It would be strange if he could be at ease. Empress Dowager Zhou gave a heavy snort. Then what are you going to do with her? You want to keep her in the palace, by your side like a little fan pendant. Aren't you afraid this matter will reach King Dingyuan's ears and he will come looking for you? She said in a voice filled with ridicule. Mo Chuan had already thought of this and he confidently said, your son will send her to live in Enli's palace. Once the East Qin matter is over, I will think of a way to restore her freedom. Like this, mother can be assured, right? Empress Dowager Zhou gave another snort and no longer raised any objections. Staying in the princess royal residence was better than staying in the imperial palace. If he stayed in her peaceful life palace, Chu Xiaoyang might come to the palace every few days to find her. This would be a headache for her. Chapter 563. Empress Dowager Zhou knew that Chu Xiaoyang and eldest princess Enlo were very close and their relationship was very good. If there was someone in this world that could control Chu Xiaoyang, it would be eldest princess Enlo. No matter how bold Chu Xiaoyang was, he wouldn't go too far in the eldest princess palace. She closed her eyes and no longer said anything. When Imo Chuan saw this, he knew that Empress Dowager Zhou had silently agreed with him, so he left. After he left, Empress Dowager Zhou slowly opened her eyes and let out a long sigh. Her heart was in chaos. The emperor had caused such a large matter and he could ignore it, but as the Empress Dowager, she couldn't ignore it. She had to help her emperor's son clean up the mess he had made and help him clean up his mess. Young, the emperor was still too young. Too impulsive. Sigh, when would he truly grow up? When would she be able to place the heavy burden of the West Chu country on the emperor's shoulders? Empress Dowager Zhou clapped her hands and called Su Jin over. She whispered a few words into her ear. This matter that could shock the entire country, under Empress Dowager Zhou's gentle arrangements, it became silent like this and no one heard of it. Other than a few people who knew, no one else knew what happened that night. Only this matter could be hidden from others, but it couldn't be hidden from the eldest princess. When Chen Ning returned to the eldest princess palace, the eldest princess excitedly came forward. She grabbed her hand and excitedly asked her. I heard that my royal brother eloped with you last night. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She bit her lips and said, where did the eldest princess hear this rumor? Could it not be true? Of course not. All right, that brat Ting Xian actually dared to lie to this princess. Watch how this princess takes care of him. The eldest princess instantly raised her brows. Chen Ning broke into a laugh. Husband, he told the eldest princess. Where did Prince Consort Yi get this news from? She didn't expect that this matter would be spread so widely that it became like this. This princess doesn't know where he heard this news from, but since you say it's not true, it's definitely not true. This princess believes your words. The eldest princess said with a sigh, last night at the palace banquet, I saw royal brother's expression suddenly change and he left, leaving behind the East Qin envoys and ministers. Moreover, he didn't come back after leaving, so I thought he brought you away. Other than you, this princess doesn't know what else could make my royal brother act like this. Chen Ning's heart was moved as she asked, was the palace banquet last night important? When she left the palace, Missouri Chuan had only sent Zhuai Feng to escort her to the eldest princess palace. After giving some instructions, he went to the royal study. She knew that something important must have happened to the country. She had already found that this matter was very troublesome and Imo Chuan Xian. Although Imo Chuan had covered it Chuan's Tian, he was Imo Chen down Imo, it Xian Shao Yi, he said. Dongling Chuan Chin, Hu Chen Princess Chuan Chin, Dao Xian Ting Shao Xian, Imo Chen Yunling did Imo. Hearing the eldest princess mention it, her heart skipped a beat and she took the chance to ask. Chapter 564. When this matter was mentioned, the eldest princess' face sunk and she was filled with anger. East Qin envoys. This was not the first time Chen Ning had heard this name. Chu Xiaobai had mentioned it before, but she had never taken it to heart. Seeing the eldest princess' angry appearance, she took it to heart. She searched the memories of the original owner and only vaguely knew that other than the West Chu country, there were 3 other countries in the era she had transmigrated into, of which the East Qin country was the strongest. But what did this have to do with the West Chu country? She comforted the eldest princess while asking the eldest princess about the details of this matter. When the eldest princess mentioned the past, she was filled with righteous indignation and kept on talking. She held her hand and talked for 2 hours. This matter happened 12 years ago before Imo Chuan had ascended to the throne. At that time, East Qin and West Chu were evenly matched, being the 2 strongest countries. East Li was eyeing West Chu, and West Chu did not have any good intentions towards East Qin. The war between the two countries was on the verge of breaking out. The West Chu emperor of the past was very ambitious, wanting to swallow East Qin and dominate the world. In order to achieve his ambitions, he personally led his troops to attack East Qin. But he never thought that in the most important battle of Whitewater Pass, the West Chu soldiers he led would suffer a crushing defeat. Not only was his army annihilated, even the West Chu emperor was captured by the East Qin country, becoming a prisoner of the East Qin country. The emperor was captured and the West Chu country was in danger. The country could be destroyed at any moment and the citizens would lose their homes. They would become a vassal country of East Qin and fall into deep water. The ministers had no leader and the West Chu country could not be without a ruler for a single day. It was Empress Dowager Zhou who came forward in this critical moment. She led the civil and military officials to help the late emperor's cousin Emo Chuan ascend the throne, placing this heavy responsibility on her son who was only in his teens. It had to be said that Empress Dowager Zhou was a great woman with great foresight. She insisted on helping her own son ascend the throne not because of wealth, but rather to stabilize the morale of the West Chu country's army and citizens. Chu Xiaoyang was still young at that time, and adding in the fact that he was the late emperor's son, if he became the emperor, East Qin could use the late emperor's life to threaten West Chu. This was also one of the reasons why the ministers opposed Chu Xiaoyang ascending the throne. With the new emperor ascending the throne, the people of West Chu calmed down. Following that, Empress Dowager Zhou gave an important task to Qin Ning's father, Great General Qin. She sent him to lead his elite troops to face the East Qin army. Great General Qin won against many with a few, making a beautiful comeback in the Battle of Whitewater Pass. His momentum was like a rainbow, forcing the East Qin army to the border in a single breath. When Great General Qin was prepared to continue advancing and attack East Qin's territory, saving the previous emperor, there was a sudden change. While the two armies were facing off, the East Qin country suddenly brought the West Chu emperor to the front. They wanted the West Chu country to retreat, not leaving a single soldier behind. Otherwise, if they left one person behind, they would cut off the emperor's hand. If they left two people behind, they would cut off the emperor's legs. Although Great General Qin was following Empress Dowager Zhou's orders, he was still loyal to the previous emperor. How could he let the previous emperor have his hands and feet cut off and lose his life in front of him? He retreated without hesitation. Chapter 565. Great General Qin did not dare make a decision on his own, so he quickly sent people to the capital to report to Empress Dowager Zhou and the new emperor. Empress Dowager Zhou gathered the ministers to discuss this matter. The ministers all had different opinions, with some advocating war and some advocating peace. In the end, it was Empress Dowager Zhou who made the decision to agree to the East Qin country's unreasonable request and pay tribute to West Chu every year. She couldn't just watch the previous emperor die, and she couldn't let everyone say that she had selfish motives in helping Emo Chuan ascend to the throne. Only like this, the burden on the West Chu country increased. The yearly tribute used up most of the West Chu country's national power, causing West Chu to decline year by year, becoming weaker and weaker. The East Qin country had a handle on West Chu, so the envoys that came to collect the tribute became more and more arrogant. This year, it became even worse. The envoys they sent actually proposed that they would compete with the West Chu country in 3 rounds. If West Chu lost, they would have to double the tribute. This could not be tolerated. Ever since Emo Chuan ascended to the throne, he had managed the entire country in an orderly manner. The citizens had finally escaped from the pain of war and were able to eat their fill and wear warm clothes. In order to deal with the large amount of tribute from the East Qin country each year, he would rather reduce the expenditures of the palace than increase the taxes of the citizens. He could be considered a good emperor that loved his citizens. But even like this, the West Chu country's national power was gradually weakened. It was a good thing that there was Great General Chen guarding the border. In the Battle of White Water Pass, he was filled with divine might, killing all the East Qin soldiers. East Qin had not dared to invade West Chu all these years because of the Great General Chen's fame. After Chen Ning heard the eldest princess story, she couldn't help letting out a long sigh. She understood the cause and effect. She felt even more pain for Mo Chuan. Thinking of when she was in her teens, she lived a carefree youth. As for Mo Chuan, he had to shoulder the heavy responsibility of the country at such a young age. No wonder he said he had never heard or told stories before, it was because he did not have a childhood or youth at all. As an emperor, he was not glorious at all, rather he was filled with shame. That was why he was a man of few words and endured humiliation. When she first met him, he was a man of few words. Only when he gradually opened his heart to her did a smile appear on his face. But she could still feel the melancholy between his brows. There was something in his heart that he could not even say to her. Now she finally understood. But the more she understood, the more her heart ached for Mo Chuan. Eldest Princess, what are the 3 questions of the East Qin country? Could it be that our West Chu can't beat their East Qin? Sigh, Brother Emperor is having a headache over this matter. Last night at the palace banquet, the envoy did mention the first test. It was called reading steals while riding a horse or something. I've never heard of reading steals while riding a horse. This princess asked the envoy what the 3 was the 3 words. The envoy sneered and said, if your country doesn't even know how to read steals from horseback, then there's no need for this competition. Just admit defeat. When the eldest princess said this, her eyebrows furrowed in anger. She pulled out the sword at her waist and waved it twice in the air. Chapter 566. Then what happened after that? Mo Chuan, he. How did the emperor respond? Chen Ning asked. My royal brother immediately agreed. Although his expression did not change, this princess could see that he did not know what this steal reading on horseback was. Afterwards his expression suddenly changed and he left, never coming back. After he left, the East Qin envoy's words became even uglier. He said that my royal brother was afraid and was a coward. This princess was so angry that she wanted to cut off his head, but mother stopped me and didn't allow me to say another word. When Chen Ning heard this, she began to ponder. Didn't she know what the East Qin envoy was talking about? Was it the steal reading on horseback that she knew about? Since it is a competition and the topic was set by their East Qin, then the envoy should clearly explain the topic. Otherwise, wouldn't this competition be them purposely making things difficult for us? She said. That's right, that's right. Mother also asked the envoy this and after the envoy heard it, he unwillingly said it. So this steal reading on horseback is a steal with words carved on it. 2 people will ride their horses and run in front of the steal at the same time. When they reach the finish line, both sides will recite the words on the steal and whoever remembers the most words on the steal will win. So it was like this. It really was the same as what she thought. Chen Ning secretly nodded her head. The eldest princess said with an indignant expression, do you think the East Qin envoy is purposely making things difficult for us? Reading the steal while riding on horseback, how could we remember the words on the steal? How fast are the horses? We humans only have a pair of eyes, so with just a glance, what can we remember? After I heard this, I couldn't hold back and scolded the envoy. The East Qin envoy had an arrogant expression. He said that since it is a competition, it is fair. If their East Qin people can do it, why can't our West Chu people do it? If we admit defeat, then this competition will end here. And that envoy's words are not unreasonable. Chen Ning nodded again. When the eldest princess heard this, she angrily threw down her hand. She stared at her and said, Ning, why are you saying this? Are you even a West Chu person? I'm only saying that this method is fair. If the East Chin country can do it, our West Chu can also do it. Chen Ning said with a calm expression. She did not change her expression because of the eldest princess change. But memorizing the steel while riding, how can there be someone who can do it? This was the competition method proposed by the East Chin country, and the people they sent out must have been trained beforehand. We don't know how long they have been training for, but we only just learned the competition method. Even if we started training now, it would be too late. The competition is in 3 days and there are only 3 days, so where can royal brother find someone like this? We can only let Xiao Bai give it a try. The eldest princess gave a sigh, not caring about blaming Qin Ning. She placed her hands on her cheeks and began to worry about Imo Chuan. The eldest princess is talking about King Jing and Chu Xiao Bai. Chen Ning's heart skipped a beat. The eldest princess listlessly nodded. Xiao Bai is very smart. Although he doesn't have a photographic memory, he isn't far from it. I think royal brother will definitely send him to compete because in the entire capital, there is no one smarter than Xiao Bai. Chapter 567. The eldest princess shook her head and said, I'm afraid this matter is not as simple as we think it is. The East Chin country is clearly prepared this time, and since they dare propose this kind of competition, it means they have confidence in their victory. Royal brother must be gathering the ministers to discuss things. Perhaps there will be someone more suitable than Xiao Bai. Let's just wait here for the news. After dinner, Yiting Xian finally brought news from the palace. It was as the eldest princess expected. The ministers unanimously recommended Chu Xiao Bai to compete, and Chu Xiao Bai generously agreed. Only he said that he did not have confidence in winning because the news he obtained from the capital was that the East Chin country would send a mysterious expert to compete, and this mysterious expert was most likely the East Chin crown prince. Hearing this news, the ministers including Imo Chuan couldn't help taking in a cold breath. Everyone had high hopes for Chu Xiao Bai and had confidence in him winning this competition, but when they heard the East Chin crown prince, the ministers couldn't help shaking their heads. Their faces turned dark, knowing that there was no need to compete and they had already lost 99% of the time. This East Chin crown prince could be said to be famous among the 4 countries. He had a natural talent, an outstanding memory, and a photographic memory. He had the reputation of being the smartest person in the world. It was rumored that he could recite a book he had only read once. Moreover, no matter what section of the book was mentioned, he would recite it without any hesitation and he would not miss a single word. But rumors were just rumors, they were inevitably exaggerated. So naturally there would be people who were dissatisfied and went to challenge the East Chin crown prince. Everyone wanted to defeat him and take the title of the smartest person in the world. However, all of them were defeated in the end. Now the West Chu ministers knew why the East Chin country was fearless enough to propose this kind of competition. As long as the East Chin crown prince came out, they would definitely win. After hearing Yiting Xian's words, the eldest princess revealed a worried expression. She rubbed her palms and said, "What should we do? Although Xiao Bai is smart, he can't compare to the East Chin crown prince. We'll lose for sure." Yiting Xian's eyes sparkled as if he was thinking of something. He suddenly said, "King Jing'an said that if the East Chin crown prince really participated, he has no confidence in winning. However, he recommended a person to the emperor, saying that this person is 10 times smarter than him. If this person is willing, perhaps he can defeat the East Chin crown prince." "Oh. Who is this person? He's even smarter than Xiao Bai." The eldest princess' eyes lit up. Yiting Xian shook his head and said, "King Jing'an is not willing to say it. He said he only knows of this person, but he doesn't know if this person is willing to stand up for West Chu, so he won't reveal this person's name. He said he would respect his own wishes. This Xiao Bai really, stuttering. Since there is such an expert, then we should go and invite him. As long as he is in the capital, as long as he is from West Chu, this princess does not believe that he will not agree. The eldest princess is right and the ministers all agree with the eldest princess. King Jing'an said that if the emperor agreed to one of this person's conditions, perhaps this person would be willing to come out. As soon as the emperor heard this, he said without hesitation. As long as this person can win the competition, no matter what request he makes, we will agree to it. Chapter 568. The eldest princess slapped the table and praised, "Not bad, not bad. If I was the emperor's brother, I would also agree to anything." Yiting Xian said with a faint smile. King Jing'an said that there was no proof, so the emperor personally wrote an imperial edict for King Jing'an to invite this expert to compete. King Jing'an took the imperial edict and left the palace. He said that within 3 days, he would invite this expert. The eldest princess said with wide open eyes, "Xiao Bai believes that this person can win. What happens if he loses?" King Jing'an never talks nonsense. Since he has this much confidence in this person, then this person must have something special about him. To be honest, I also want to see what this expert King Jing'an mentioned looks like. This kind of person, he must have a strange appearance and stand out from the masses. Yiting Xian's expression was filled with fascination. And then we'll wait for Xiao Bai's good news. The eldest princess let out a sigh of relief. She looked at Chen Ning and asked, "Ning, why haven't you said anything? Don't you also want to see the senior expert that Xiao Bai mentioned?" Chen Ning gave a vague sound. The eldest princess pulled her hand and said, "The competition is in 3 days, so you can come with this princess. You can sit by this princess' side at that time. That brat Chu Xiao Yang won't dare come and talk to you." "Alright, many thanks to the eldest princess." Chen Ning thanked the eldest princess. She saw Yiting Xian looking at the eldest princess with a loving gaze. She knew that the two of them still had things to say, so she bid farewell to the eldest princess and walked back to her room. On the way, her brows knit together as she thought. The person Chu Xiao Bai recommended to Mo Chuan, could it be her? The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. This was because she had shown her memory to Chu Xiao Bai once before. Chu Xiao Bai's stunned appearance at that time was still in front of her. But why didn't he say it to Mo Chuan? Why did he pretend to be mysterious and ask the emperor for this strange edict? All of a sudden, her chest violently shook, and her heart began to beat wildly. He did it for her. It was all for her. This edict was specially asked for her. He knew that she wanted to separate from Chu Xiaoyang, but she lacked a chance. Now that chance had finally come. If she could win, she could openly ask the emperor for her request. No matter what it was, the emperor's words were like gold and an imperial edict had been given, so he had to agree to it no matter what. This is a ruler's words. This made it impossible for Chu Xiaoyang to object. Moreover, this way, no one would suspect that the emperor was deliberately biased, and no one would suspect that there was any ambiguous relationship between the emperor and her. This was because when the edict was issued, the emperor had no idea who this person was and what kind of request she would make. This would protect her reputation and also protect Mo Chuan's reputation. Like this, it would protect the reputation of the world. Chen Ning's reputation. Chen's eyes. She never thought that Chu Xiaobai would be this considerate for her, considering every aspect for her. Moreover, he was so meticulous, treating her with all his heart. Xiaobai. Xiaobai. Bai. Bai. Xiao Xiao. Xiao. Did he know what happened between her and Mo Chuan? Chapter 569. Chen Ning gave a faint sigh. She passed through a moon gate and entered a garden. After passing through the garden, she returned to the place she lived in. She knew that Chu Xiaobai would come to find her, but she didn't know what to say to him when she saw him. Should she thank him or apologize? She was walking in a daze when she suddenly heard someone call her from behind. Ning. The voice was warm and clear, sounding very peaceful in the night. Chen Ning stopped moving and slowly turned her head. Then she saw Chu Xiaobai. He was standing under an apricot tree, his white clothes like frost. The apricot flowers were like fire and there was a bright red lantern hanging from the tree. The light shined on his handsome face, making him look very gentle and hazy. Ning. He called her again and revealed a faint smile to her. His face was like a painting, his eyes were clear, and his face was like jade. The apricot flowers that bloomed like a fire were overshadowed by his smile. Chen Ning gave a slight sigh. She already knew that he looked like a monster, and now that he was smiling, he looked even more like one. She slowly walked over to him. Xiaobai. His eyes sparkled as he quietly looked at her. He suddenly raised his hand and placed something in her hand. Ning. What do you think this is? She didn't need to look down. She could feel the silky smooth feeling, and she knew that this was the imperial decree he had painstakingly obtained for her. Her heart was moved and her eyes filled with tears. She looked at him. Xiaobai, thank you. You already know. AI, it must have been Yiting Xian who told you, right? I knew that this brat would tell my royal aunt everything. If it wasn't for me being delayed, I would have been the first person to tell you this good news. Chu Xiaobai regretfully stomped his feet, but his face still had a calm and pure expression. Chen Ning suddenly felt that she didn't need to say anything. He understood everything and he didn't blame her at all. His attitude towards her was still the same as before. A large stone fell from her heart. She was really worried that after he knew about her and Nemo Chuan's matter, he would hate her and blame her. On his face, she didn't see a trace of sadness, anger, resentment, or jealousy. His smile was just as gentle as before. Perhaps, his love for her was that kind of pure and unadulterated love. Xiaobai, are you that confident that I can win against the East Qin Crown Prince? He's the smartest person in the world, and I'm just an unknown little girl. Have you ever thought about what would happen if I lost? Wouldn't I become a sinner of West Chu? The people must hate me to death. She blinked and purposely put on a troubled expression. He thought about it and said in a serious voice, I never thought you would win, but your chances of winning are higher than mine. I hope you can win and fight for this hard to come by chance. If you can't win, I believe no one in West Chu can win against the East Qin Crown Prince. The citizens will not blame you, so don't feel too much pressure. But how do you know I can read steals? I've never practiced at all. She was telling the truth. Chapter 570. This wasn't something that could be secured just by having an outstanding memory. Since East Qin dared to come up with this topic, it meant that the East Qin Crown Prince was certain of winning. He must have perfectly combined the two. However, she only had less than 3 days to practice visual recognition that she had never tried before. Even she was not confident in it. Ning, I believe in you. He firmly said. She revealed a bitter smile. She did not believe in herself. But, she would do her best to fight this time. For Mo Chuan, for her freedom, she had to win. With a bang sound, the two of them were scared. They looked in the direction of the sound at the same time. They saw a large and beautiful firework appear in the night sky not far away. It was dazzling to the eyes, blooming with 5 colors as it bloomed in the sky. The flowers were like rain, the stars were like rain, and the little fireworks scattered down, creating a beautiful scene. Such beautiful fireworks. Chen Ning stared at it and gave a heartfelt praise. She was looking at the fireworks, but he was looking at her. Her eyes were even brighter than the fireworks and her face was even more beautiful than the fireworks. He could not get enough of looking at her. When she came back to her senses and looked at him, he looked up at the night sky that was dyed red by the fireworks. Ning, do you want to see the lantern show? He excitedly suggested. Lantern show? That's right, this year is the annual lantern show. It is the most lively one. There are lantern races, lantern riddles, and all kinds of interesting things that you can't even imagine. Do you want to see it? Chen Ning's heart skipped a beat and she nodded. All right, I'll go take a look. She was still young and liked the romantic fireworks and lights. Should we call the eldest princess and husband to come with us? Chu Xiaobai shook his head with a smile. My royal aunt has never liked this. Husband has a calm personality and hates crowded places, so they definitely won't go. What, are you afraid I won't be able to protect you if you come with me to the lantern show? You can be assured, what happened last time won't happen again. He smiled as he took out 2 masks from his chest. One had a smiling face and one had a crying face, waving them in front of her. Choose for yourself, which one do you want to wear? Chen Ning said with a smile, Xiaobai, you're really thoughtful. She went to take the crying face, but he gave the smiling face to her. I like seeing you smile, he said in a serious voice. She took the mask with a smile and put it on. To be honest, she was really worried that they would be harassed by the hooligans on the streets. Although they had Little White's protection, they were going out to see the lanterns, not to look for trouble. If they were to fight and kill along the way, what fun would there be? Chu Xiaobai put on the crying face mask, only revealing a pair of dark eyes. The 2 of them walked on the crowded street. The lights were like a sea, and the people were like a sea. It was as if all the people in the capital had come out to watch the lanterns. This was indeed a rare show, it could not be described with just the word lively. Chen Ning never thought that the ancient lantern festival would be more interesting than the modern one. She stood in front of a lantern competition stall and couldn't help being stunned. There were all kinds of lanterns here, and they were of different shapes. There was a money box in front of each lantern. If the tourists thought that they liked the most, they would put a copper coin into the money box. Finally, the number of copper coins in the money box would be counted, and the one with the most copper coins would be the winner. Chapter 571. Chen Ning gave a serious nod. In her eyes, each lantern was the result of the craftsman's hard work. Those ingenious designs made her feel like it was an eye-opener for someone from the modern era. She really did put a copper coin into the money box in front of each lantern. After leaving the lantern booth, the 2 of them were pushed forward by the tide of people. Although the night was getting darker and darker, the lanterns were still bright. They lit up the dark sky and also lit up the smiling faces of the people watching the lanterns. As the annual lantern festival, all the youthful boys and girls were looking forward to meeting the right person on this day. From time to time, Chen Ning would see a handsome young man and a beautiful young girl bumping into each other in the crowd. Both of their faces would turn red and they would look at each other affectionately, as if they were lovers and concubines were interested in each other. She would also see some young girls holding small lanterns in their hands. When they met a man they liked, they would come forward with a red face and give the lantern in their hands to the man. If the man accepted it, it meant that he had accepted the girl's friendship. Of course, there were also some exceptionally outstanding men who received lanterns from different girls in a row. For example, Chu Xiaobai was one of them. Before they even took a few steps, Chen Ning found that Chu Xiaobai was surrounded by a group of fragrant clothes. Although he was wearing a mask, his outstanding charm and otherworldly temperament made him particularly eye-catching. Many girls threw flirtatious glances at him, but he ignored them all. "This young master, this lantern. Please accept it." A bold girl squeezed out of the crowd and gave the lantern in her hand to Chu Xiaobai with a red face. "Young master, this servant's lantern was personally made by this servant. I ask young master to accept it. This is my lantern." In the blink of an eye, Chu Xiaobai's chest suddenly had 7-8 lanterns of various shapes and colors. He threw all the lanterns on the ground without any hesitation. Then he grabbed Chen Ning's hand and left without looking back, not caring about the broken hearts behind him at all. Boring, these women are really boring. He waved his sleeves in annoyance. Chen Ning looked at him and began to giggle. "What are you laughing at?" Chu Xiaobai stared at her. "Nothing." Chen Ning turned her face away with a smile. She suddenly pointed at the crowd in front of them. "Xiaobai, look over there, there's someone doing riddles. You like it? Come, let's go guess the riddles." He pulled her hand and led her through the crowd, arriving in front of the high platform. There was a sea of people in front of the high platform. If Chu Xiaobai did not secretly use his internal energy, the two of them would not have been able to squeeze in. Nearly 100 lanterns were hung below the high platform. Each lantern was exquisitely made. Under each tea lantern, there was a note with a riddle written on it. As long as they guessed the riddle on the lantern, they would receive a corresponding gift. Of course, the riddles for every lantern were different. The harder the riddle, the more valuable the gift. Of them, the remaining riddles were the riddle that they were. The riddles were the riddles. The remaining riddles were naturally harder to guess. Of course, the prizes were also extremely generous. Many people were gathered around the largest and most beautiful 4-screen lamp, frowning as they racked their brains for a solution. Chapter 572. It was because it was mysterious that more and more people wanted to guess this riddle. "Ning, let's guess this lantern, how about it?" Chu Xiaobai excitedly pulled Chen Ning to the 4 lanterns and began reading the riddle on them. This is a couplet. He said word for word. The first couplet is, "White isn't, black isn't, red isn't, yellow isn't. It's like a fox, wolf, cat, or dog. It's neither a domestic animal nor a wild beast." After pausing, he continued to read the second couplet. "There are poems, there are lyrics, and there are also rites. It's vague on the north, south, east, and west. Although it's short, it's still a wonderful piece of writing." After reading it, he couldn't help knitting his brows like the people around him. He thought that with his intelligence, it would be easy for him to guess this riddle and he would win the mysterious gift for her. He never thought that this riddle would be harder than he expected. He guessed several words in his heart, but he felt that they were all wrong. He couldn't help feeling depressed. When he looked up, he happened to meet her slightly smiling eyes. "Ning, could it be that you've guessed it?" Chen Ning said with a faint smile. "This isn't hard to guess." The surrounding scholars all sucked in a cold breath as they stared at her with wide eyes. "I say, little girl, you don't look that old, but your tone isn't small at all. All of us can't guess it, but you're saying it's not hard." "Humph, it's easier said than done." "Since you say this riddle isn't hard, then what do you think the answer is?" These people were not convinced and began to ridicule Chen Ning. Chu Xiaobai's eyes revealed a look of anger as he coldly said, "You pedantic scholars, if you don't have any skill, how would you know that others don't have any skill? You only know how to be jealous. No wonder you have a large beard and are wearing white robes. You can't wear a purple robe." The people saying these strange words were not young and they were wearing the scholars' white robes. They were proud of their status, but they had been slapped in the face by Chu Xiaobai's words. They were filled with anger as they pointed at Chu Xiaobai and said, "Stinky brat, stop protecting that little girl. She dares to brag, So why don't you make her say the answer and let us pedantic scholars see this little girl's talent for being the champion? Chen Ning pursed her lips and disapprovingly said, "It's just a riddle, it's not that great of a skill. Even if I become the champion, I wouldn't care about it." She did not have a good impression of these old scholars. They spoke in a sour tone, were narrow-minded, and had no tolerance for others. It was no wonder that they failed all the examinations. If she was the chief examiner, she would definitely not accept these kinds of students. Hearing this, the surrounding people looked at her and their chins fell to the ground. Hearing this, everyone looked at her and their jaws fell to the ground. A waiter smiled at Chen Ning and said, "This miss, if you can guess the answer to this riddle, then please write it down on this piece of paper and let this little one take it to the owner of the lantern. If you can guess it, then I'll have to congratulate this miss." This little girl's tone was becoming more and more arrogant the more she spoke. Chen Ning nodded with a smile. She wrote 2 words on a piece of paper and gave it to the waiter. The waiter quickly squeezed out of the crowd with the piece of paper and went up to the high platform. He said something to an old man on the high platform and then handed over the answer to Chen Ning's riddle. Chapter 573. The old man opened the note and took a look. His eyes instantly lit up and he revealed a smile. He nodded and then picked up a brocade box beside him. He followed the waiter down the stage and walked in Chen Ning's direction. When everyone saw this scene, they all let out a wah sound. They knew that Chen Ning had guessed the riddle and they all looked at her with envious eyes. This old man was a famous merchant in the capital city. Every year he would hold a grand riddle guessing contest and the person who guessed it would be given a very rich gift. He had made this riddle from last year to this year and no one had ever guessed it. So the old man had said from the beginning that whoever guessed the riddle this year would receive a mysterious gift. The waiter led the old man through the crowd. He came in front of Chen Ning and said, "This is the riddle that this young miss has guessed." The old man said with a smile, "Young miss, you've guessed the riddle of this 4-screen lantern. This is the prize this old man prepared for this riddle. I ask young miss to accept it." Chen Ning smiled as she took the brocade box from the old man's hand and said, "Many thanks." Her hands suddenly sank down and she almost dropped the box on the ground. It was a good thing Chu Xiaobai was quick and caught it. This box is so heavy." She didn't expect that the brocade box, which didn't look big, would be so heavy. She didn't know what was inside. "Ning, open it and see what kind of mysterious gift it is. Why is it so heavy?" Chu Xiaobai also felt this was strange. This brocade box was only a foot wide. Even if the entire box was made of iron, it would not be this heavy. Chen Ning nodded. She opened the box and saw that there was an irregular stone inside the box. It was around the size of a fist and looked dark. The surrounding crowd had already stretched their necks out with curious faces. They were prepared to see what kind of priceless treasure this mysterious gift was, but who would have thought that it would be a normal-looking stone? They all burst out in laughter. Especially the old scholars that had been mocked by Chu Xiaobai, their laughter was the loudest. "Ha, ha, I thought it was something good, but I never thought it would be a broken stone. Interesting, truly interesting. We really have to congratulate this young miss, congratulations to this young miss. We thought we would be able to pick up a treasure, but we never thought that it would be a broken stone. Ha, 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 ha." These people all revealed expressions of schadenfreude. Chen Ning was wearing a mask and no one could see her expression, but her laughter rang out like a silver bell. "Thank you, uncle. This is really a good treasure. It's a pity that most people have eyes but can't see it. They actually think it's a piece of rotten stone. They really have eyes but can't see." When the old man heard this, his eyes couldn't help lighting up. "Miss, do you know what kind of treasure this is?" To tell you the truth, this old man obtained this stone by accident. I only know that its value is extraordinary, but I don't know what's so special about it. If young lady knows what it is, I hope young lady can tell me. Chen Ning did not know what kind of treasure this stone was, but she knew that when things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. This stone looked normal, but it was 10 times heavier than normal stones of the same size, so it was definitely not a normal item. Chen's heart. This Chen's. Chu Xiaobai was holding the stone and studying it, but he suddenly shouted out in excitement. Chapter 574. Chu Xiaobai placed the stone in front of her and pointed at the surface of the stone. He said in a pleasantly surprised voice, "Ning, look, there is a faint red glow on the surface of the stone and it is incomparably heavy. This means that there is a large amount of profound iron inside because profound iron is 10 times heavier than normal iron. If you touch it, it will be cold to the touch, just like a block of ice. So, I can conclude that this is an extremely rare profound cold iron stone." As soon as his voice fell, the surrounding people began to buzz with disbelief. Everyone looked at Chen Ning with eyes filled with disdain and schadenfreude, but now they were filled with envy and jealousy. Their eyes stared right at the black stone in Chu Xiaobai's hand. They wished a hand could grow out of their eyes and take it for themselves. Chen Ning did not know what kind of treasure the profound cold iron stone was, but most of the people here knew. This was a strange stone produced in the extreme north. It was something that could only be found and not sought. It was worth 100 times more than gold of the same size. But everyone had only heard of this stone and had never seen it before. So when they heard that the prize for the lantern riddle was this precious profound cold iron stone, many people could not hold themselves back. "Counselor Lu, you said that this girl guessed the riddle. Please announce the riddle and this girl's answer so that we can all be convinced." An old scholar said. That old man held a riddle party every year, so many people knew that he was surnamed Lu. "All right, then I'll announce the answer to this riddle." Squire Lu nodded his head and pointed at the riddle. The first half of the couplet is guess, and the second half is riddles. Put together, it is guessing. What, did you guys guess it as well? As he said this, he opened Chen Ning's handwritten note. There were 2 clear words written on it, riddles. Everyone broke out in cheers. Those old scholars felt like they had lost all face and were filled with shame. They retreated back into the crowd and did not show their faces again. Chen Ning took the profound cold iron stone from Chu Xiaobai's hands. She was prepared this time and held it firmly. She felt that this stone was ice cold to the touch, it truly deserved its name. She placed the cold stone back into the box and gave it back to Counselor Lu. Counselor Lu said in a stunned voice, "Miss, what do you mean by this? Since this profound cold iron stone is so precious, how could this little girl refuse it? I ask Counselor Lu to take it back. Since Miss and this young master can recognize its origin, it is enough to show that you are fated with it. This old man will definitely not return the gift. Giving this stone to Miss is like gifting a treasured sword to a hero, or gifting powder to a beautiful woman." As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd said in unison, "Exactly, exactly." Seeing his sincerity, Chen Ning sincerely thanked him and accepted it. Chu Xiaobai took it for her and said with a smile, "Ning, you like guessing lantern riddles. There are still many that you haven't guessed yet, so why don't you guess them all? Perhaps there will be a pleasant surprise as a prize." Chen Ning nodded with a smile, "Then I'll keep guessing for fun." Chapter 575. This is hibiscus. She thought about it and thought of the answer. Director Lu nodded with a smile and said, "That's right, it's hibiscus. Someone come, give this lantern riddle prize to this girl." The waiter brought over a brocade box. When he opened it, there was a beautiful mirror inside. Only this mirror was different from the common bronze mirrors on the market. It was carved out of glass and the reflection was incomparably clear. It could compare to modern-day craftsmanship. Wow, what a beautiful mirror! The surrounding women immediately let out sounds of envy. This was something they had never seen before. Chen Ning revealed a smile. She was already used to this since she came from the modern era. She gave it to Chu Xiaobai beside her and then went to guess the next lantern riddle. These lantern riddles were not complicated at all. It was just that the person who came up with the riddle was deliberately mystifying them. There were curtains and acrostic poems, creating many tricks. She only thought about it for a bit and guessed them all. The waiter ran back and forth to take the prize. He was panting from running, but he could not keep up with Chen Ning's speed. Later, he learned to be good. After taking the prize, he did not give it to Chen Ning and directly placed it in Chu Xiaobai's chest. Very quickly, Chu Xiaobai's chest was filled with large and small brocade boxes. Xiaobai, where are you? After Chen Ning finished guessing the lantern riddle, she turned around and found that Chu Xiaobai had disappeared. She asked in a surprised voice. I'm here. Chu Xiaobai's clear voice came from the pile of boxes. Chen Ning looked over and could only laugh as she bent over. The gift boxes were piled high and even Chu Xiaobai's head could be seen. He looked like a moving Christmas tree with Santa's presents hanging all over him. Xiaobai, why are you so silly? If you can't take these boxes, then don't take them. Why are you holding them all in your chest? She smiled and wanted to help him reduce his burden, but Chu Xiaobai dodged to the side. He tightly held the boxes in his chest like they were treasures. If you don't want them, I want them. If you don't want them, I want them, he said. Chen Ning felt it was strange and tilted her head to look at him. He was the respected King Jing'an, why would he care about these prizes? Other than that profound cold iron stone, which was very precious, the other items were not worth too much silver. Why did he treat them like treasures? Then I'll help you take a few. No need, no need. These things are not heavy at all. Don't touch them, otherwise they'll fall. Chu Xiaobai held the gift box and carefully walked forward. At some point, the mask on his face had been scraped off by the gift box, revealing a delicate and handsome face. His eyes were black and bright, and he was in high spirits. There was a smile on his lips. In order to prevent her from stealing the things in his arms, Chu Xiaobai walked in front and she followed behind him. He blocked the surging stream of people for her and protected the things in his arms from falling. From time to time, he would turn around and smile at her. Each time, he Chu Xiao Xiao. Su, she Xiao every, she looked. Hi. She saw the passers-by looking at her and then looking at Chu Xiaobai with gazes of sympathy. Bye. And she. I. Chapter 576. That girl raised her hand and slapped Chen Ning's face while scolding her. You bad woman, not taking your own things and letting this young master take them for you, do you still have any face? Chen Ning instinctively dodged. She grabbed the girl's hand and said in a cold voice, Who are you? Why are you hitting me? As soon as her voice fell, another girl charged out of the crowd and reached out to grab her hair. Bad woman, bad woman. Actually treating such a handsome young master like a servant, this is too infuriating. This girl will definitely teach you a lesson. Following that, several other girls charged out, hitting and grabbing at her. So, it was all for Chu Xiaobai. Chen Ning didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although she knew some basic self-defense techniques, it was not enough for her to deal with these jealous young girls at the same time. She felt a chill on her face as her smiling mask was taken off by a girl. Everyone's eyes lit up as they saw her snow-white cheeks and misty hair. Even the tens of thousands of lanterns could not cover her brilliance. That girl was stunned. She stretched out her sharp nails and slashed at Chin Ning's face. With a "chi" sound, that girl suddenly felt a sharp pain in her wrist. She had been hit by something and tears began to fall from the pain. Looking down, she found that it was a gift box that had hit her. "Oh! So painful." The girls surrounding Chin Ning all cried out in pain as they were all hit by the gift box. If it wasn't hitting their faces, it was hitting their hands. When they looked up, they saw that Chu Xiaobai was already standing in front of Chin Ning, glaring at them. Who dares to touch her again? He protected Chin Ning. "Oh, young master, you. We really can't stand seeing this. That's right, this bad woman is bullying you, we really can't stand it. That's right, this bad woman is bullying you, we really can't stand it." The girls all had looks of grievance on their faces. They were bragging to Chu Xiaobai while secretly looking at him. Chu Xiaobai revealed a smile. His smile was like the cold moon, making the girls' eyes pop out, but his words were merciless. "What does it matter to you how she orders me around? This young master is happy to be ordered around by her, what does it matter to you?" His words made the girls' faces turn red, and they couldn't say a word. "Poochie." Chen Ning couldn't hold it in and began to laugh. The girls were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. They pointed at Chu Xiaobai and said, "You really don't know how to appreciate people. I think you're just dogs catching mice and meddling in other people's business. If you really have nothing better to do, then stay at home and do embroidery and study. Don't go out and make a fool of yourself and embarrass yourself." Chu Xiaobai was too lazy to even look at them. He turned to Chen Ning and said, "Ning, are you injured?" Chen Ning shook her head and said, "I'm not hurt." The young girls' faces turned red from the humiliation. Seeing how Chu Xiaobai was supporting Chen Ning like this, some of them cried out and ran away. Some of them had tears in their eyes and some of them stared at Chen Ning. "Ning, let's go. Ignore these hateful women. Ning, 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 let go, Ning and Ning, Chin, we, Ning." Chapter 577. There were very few people on the stone bridge, but there were many red men and green women on both sides of the bridge. They were squatting on the shore and placing lanterns filled with wishes into the water, letting the lanterns float down the river. Looking down from the bridge, the lanterns on the river were floating down the river. It was like countless stars had fallen into the water, making it look like a bright galaxy. "It's really beautiful." Chen Ning propped up her chin as she lay on the stone bridge, looking at the river and the lanterns on the river. "Come, let's see what kind of good things you've won today." Chu Xiaobai giggled as he placed all the boxes on the ground. Then he excitedly opened them like a child. Chen Ning also revealed a smile. She also had the excitement of opening presents. The two of them opened the boxes one by one. Other than the precious profound cold iron stone, the most precious thing was the glass mirror, as well as a few beaded bracelets and daily necessities. Every time they opened one, Chu Xiaobai would ask her, "Do you like it? Do you want to keep it?" Chen Ning would always shake her head with a smile. She did not have any interest in these things. As for the lantern riddles, it was just for fun and not to win any prizes. "All right, if you don't want it, then I'll take it." He placed all the things she didn't want into a box and then held it in his chest like it was a treasure. "You have to keep this profound cold iron stone and the mirror." Chu Xiaobai gave the glass mirror and the profound cold iron stone to her. I want this mirror, but this stone, I really don't know what use it has, so I'll just give it to you. Chen Ning gave the box containing the profound cold iron stone to Chu Xiaobai. Do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? He revealed a surprised look on his face. I only know that it is very precious and worth a lot of money, but I really don't know what use it has. She honestly said. In her memory palace, there was no record of the profound cold iron stone at all. This is an extremely rare type of iron ore. It's extremely rare, and it's produced in the bitter cold lands of the extreme north. In the profound cold iron stone, the more profound iron it contains, the rarer it is. Look at this stone, its entire body is emitting a faint red light. It's enough to show that it's extremely rich in profound iron. If it can be refined and added when refining weapons, even if it's ordinary iron, it will immediately become a rare and powerful weapon. Tell me, isn't this a treasure? This piece of profound cold iron stone is the size of a fist, and I estimate that it can be used to create several world-shaking swords. Do you not want this kind of treasure? If you really don't want it, then I'll take it. He purposely held the box in his chest, making it seem like he was not willing. Of it. Profound of profound cold, Chu said with a faint smile. Are you serious? Chu Xiaobai's eyes lit up. Any martial artist would dream of owning a good weapon that could cut through gold and jade. A godly weapon would be able to double one's martial prowess. But this kind of opportunity could only be found and not sought. Although Chu Xiaobai was a prince and had seen many treasures in the world, he had never seen a legendary divine weapon. He could imagine how incomparably sharp a weapon forged from this profound cold iron stone would be. It was enough to make all martial artists go crazy. Chapter 578. Chu Xiaobai's handsome face turned slightly red. He suddenly knit his brows and looked down at the riverbank. What's happening over there? Chen Ning also heard the commotion coming from under the bridge, and she looked down from the stone bridge. She saw that the warm and romantic river lantern scene had disappeared, and the young girls on the shore were in a panic. They were all in a mess as they hid behind their families. Several dozen tall men were squeezed into the crowd. Their eyes were like wolves releasing a green light. Seeing a young girl, they would go up and grab them, carefully looking over them. If they were beautiful, they would be thrown into a carriage on the side. All the young girls that were thrown into the carriage were tied up like dumplings, and their mouths were gagged. They couldn't cry even if they wanted to. Let go of my daughter. Who are you? You dare to kidnap young girls in front of everyone. This is the son of heaven's land. Do you still have the law in your eyes? The citizens and the young girls' families were filled with rage. They charged out, wanting to save the young girls that were tied up. Who would have thought that these several dozen large men would be incomparably strong? They had bare right arms that were filled with muscles, and their palms were like fans, looking like they were trained in martial arts. A large man grabbed a citizen that was charging forward and raised him up high into the air like a chicken. Then he suddenly let go and threw that citizen far away. The surrounding people all shouted out. They saw that citizen fall from the sky, and with a put-on sound, he fell into the river. Save people! Save people! That person's head came out of the river, and then he sank back down. With a put-on sound, in the blink of an eye, several more citizens were thrown into the river by the large men. When everyone saw this scene, they all charged forward. They didn't know where these large men came from. Not only did they have an arrogant attitude, their martial arts were also very good. How could the citizens be a match for them? In an instant, the river was like dumplings being thrown into the water. Water splashed everywhere as citizen after citizen was thrown into the water. These people are really bold. They dare to kidnap young girls, acting so arrogantly. Ning, stay here and don't move. I'll go teach them a lesson. When Chu Xiaobai saw this scene, how could he endure it? With a tap of his foot, he leaped off the bridge. A large man dragged out a young girl from the crowd. The young girl desperately struggled as her face turned pale in fright, screaming for help. But when the citizens saw how fierce these large men were, throwing people around after grabbing them, the lucky ones were thrown into the river and didn't drown, but the unlucky ones were thrown into the rocks on the shore. Their heads were bleeding and it was unknown if they were still alive. Everyone was stunned and no one dared go forward to save the young girl. Let go that girl. Suddenly, a clear and pleasant voice resounded in the air, followed by the sound of clothes fluttering in the wind. Everyone only felt their vision blur, and then they saw a faintly discernible figure in white flying through the air, like a god descending to the mortal world. Chu Xiaobai's body was in the air as he reached out with his right hand and grabbed the man's right wrist. With a "kacha" sound, the man gave a pitiful cry like a pig being slaughtered. His wrist had actually been broken by Chu Xiaobai. The girl broke free from the man's clutches and stood there in a daze. Her eyes were wide open as she looked at the white-clothed youth descending from the sky. Chapter 579. When the large men on the side saw that their companion's wrist had been broken, they let out angry roars and tried to grab Chu Xiaobai. Lu Wanting screamed out in fear, "Young master, be careful." Chu Xiaobai's brows jumped up as he pulled her behind him. Then he waved his right hand and with a series of "pa, pa, pa" sounds, all the large men were slapped in the face. His move was very fast and the large men did not even have time to react at all. The crowd immediately burst into enthusiastic cheers. The large men were angry and embarrassed. They loudly shouted as they charged at Chu Xiaobai again. Chu Xiaobai waved his sleeve and the large men felt a wave of power surging in front of them. They could not stand still and were pushed back, falling on their butts. "Miss, don't be afraid. With me here, they won't do anything to you." Chu Xiaobai turned around and looked at the young girl behind him. This was because she was tightly holding onto his clothes, trembling like a rabbit. Lu Wanting felt that his voice was indescribably beautiful and she couldn't help looking up at him. Just now, his face was facing away from the light, so she couldn't see his face clearly. She could only see his snow-white clothes and his tall and straight figure. When she looked up, she saw a very handsome face. His eyebrows were like the mountains in the distance, making him stand out from the crowd. He was as beautiful as snow, making her heart beat faster. "Young master, thank you for saving Wan. I really don't know how to repay this young master. May I ask for this young master's name and where you live? Wan will definitely thank this young master for saving my life in the future." Lu Wanting's heart was beating like a little deer as she thanked Chu Xiaobai with a red face. She had grown up in her house and her family was very strict. She never left the house, not even taking a step. So even though King Jing'an, Chu Xiaobai was famous in the capital city, she had never seen him before. This time, when she came to watch the lanterns and make a wish, she sneaked out without bringing any servants or maids with her. She didn't expect that she would encounter such a disaster. She was scared out of her wits, but suddenly, a handsome young man dressed in white came to her rescue. His martial arts were high, and his appearance was handsome. Unexpectedly, she lost her composure and lost her heart. She had completely forgotten all the teaching she had received in the boudoir and she actually said her nickname. This was clearly expressing her love for Chu Xiaobai and wanting to repay him with her body. How could Chu Xiaobai understand the complicated thoughts of these girls? He did not think too much about it. He had saved her unintentionally, so he raised his eyebrows and said nonchalantly, "There's no need." Lu Wanting looked down, hiding the disappointment in her eyes. When she was about to say something, Chu Xiaobai suddenly pushed her behind him. With strange sounds coming from all directions, several dozen large men jumped up from the ground at the same time. They charged into the carriage with their weapons and charged at Chu Xiaobai. "Young master, be careful. Young master, be out." The crowd let out cries of alarm as they scattered in all directions. There were many kind-hearted people that loudly reminded Chu Xiaobai. Chu Xiaobai gave a calm smile, not even looking at the large men charging at him with their weapons. The commoners only saw a white flash in front of them before hearing a ding, ding, dang, dang sound. There was a pile of weapons on the ground. Looking at those large men, they saw that their hands were empty. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.